Hello there, and welcome to the Force Collective. We are back again with Star Wars Topics, episode 21. What makes Star Wars Star Wars? This is a part two to last week's discussion. It was such a big discussion that we had to make a part two, as we mentioned last time. And we also have a returning guest, Dark Knight, on here. It's good
Hello,
to have you
hello.
back.
Yeah,
Now,
it's great.
we're also joined with Commander Tano, or joined by, or I can't even speak anymore. Also
I
joining
can't
us,
either.
also joining us today, Commander Tano and Chrono. I had to pause for a while to think of what I was going to say, and I still messed it up. But yeah, I don't know if Sir AOA will be joining us today. He hasn't said anything, unfortunately, so he might be joining in later, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out. But anyways, so we are going to talk about one thing first before we get into the part two of last week's discussion, and that is the KOTOR remake. Everybody's talking about it, and a lot of people are worried about it. And me personally, I'm not as much. I'm just cautiously optimistic, as I've told everybody that I've talked to about it. I'm very cautiously optimistic because, yeah, she may be an activist or whatever. She may have said controversial things on her Twitter, but I don't think she will ruin the game. Your thoughts, guys? We'll start with whoever wants to go.
It won't bother me none. I mean, it's just I just think that Star Wars, especially for this game that's coming out, there's a lot riding on it, and especially with it being a PS5 PC exclusive, it's going to probably be handled with a lot of care. And I'd say there'll be less of that you're worried about, and more of just sticking to originality and maybe a few little twists, but nothing too major.
Yeah, I agree with that. What do you think, Commander Tano?
Obviously, since I'm not like a video game person, so I don't have necessarily I don't have words today, but I'm looking for a synonym for investment, but not quite investment. But I think, as I would say with a lot of things, just kind of just cautious. It's like kind of what our discussion like maybe a few weeks back about kind of the Kenobi series being and trolls, the trolls person. It's the same.
I almost forgot about that.
It's a similar reaction. It's like who knows, but one could be pleasantly surprised. We'll see.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for as well. I mean, like I told Dark Knight before the stream, because we sort of talked about it a little bit. I believe that she doesn't have enough weight to pull down the whole thing, if you know what I mean. I said it better this time though than I did when I was talking to him.
Not enough way to say Ryan Johnson might have.
Yeah, exactly. So, what about you, Chrono?
Well, having played the previous game, the original one, when it came out, knowing what it means to a lot of audiences, I am worried because she might not ruin it entirely, but the people they have interviewed about production of the game have already said they want to go in a different direction. We all know what that means whenever they say it. And that is not good. I don't really think. I hope you are right, because if you are right, we all win. But I don't think they're going to make small changes, because Star Wars, in particular, has been really hijacked to promote whatever they want to promote. In this case, it's not an accident, and it's not a coincidence that this person was hired for the job. It's just like what happened with this other writer, the one, what's his name? The one writing the Black Superman movie.
Oh, I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember the name. I've not looked into
Michael
that
B.
in a while.
Jordan?
That's the guy playing him.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
No, the guy writing it, the guy is an activist and he's always race baiting people into stuff, and it wasn't a
can't
coincidence
think of his name.
that he was. Huh?
I can't think of his name.
No, I can't either. But the point is, I think it's the same thing that they obviously hired him for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
And in Kotor case, I really think it's the same. I don't see this being a coincidence or something like, oh yeah, well, she might pull it off. She's obviously biased towards it, and people are already fighting about whether Revan is male or female in canon. What is canon? What is not? We can totally expect that kind of stuff from the game. I'm really hoping you are right, but I'm not exactly optimistic about this new project because I really think they're gonna mess it up.
Well, I see where you're coming from on that one. I mean, I've barely played the original. I'm doing the playthrough. I just, like I've said multiple times, I haven't edited the second part like I needed to, which I will get to someday. But anyways, I enjoyed what little I've played of it so far, and for them to ruin something like that, especially since, like Dark Knight said, it was like one of the best Star Wars games of all time. Actually, probably the best Star Wars game of all time, to be honest. For them to do something like that, which another thing to consider though. We talk about how this game is very beloved and probably, like I said, the best Star Wars game of all time. Well, that didn't stop Disney from messing up Star Wars, one of the most beloved franchises of all time. Yeah. So, I mean, it is what it is, and I just like being optimistic about things. I like to think the best, but that ultimately sometimes ends in disappointment. Which that's a negative thing for me to say, but sometimes it's also worth it. I don't know. You just gotta believe what you want at this point. I mean, you don't know how to feel about anything that they put out that's Star Wars anymore because you feel like something wrong is gonna, or something's gonna go wrong with it.
Actually, I was really, really surprised when they announced it, and I was like, hell yeah, I want to play a new version because obviously the game is really outdated, but if you just overhaul the game with new graphics and improved mechanics and whatever, even if you just make the same game again, the game would be a success because the original is so good. It's great storytelling. The idea that you can play as whoever, because they're fighting right now over the canon, but you could play as a male or female depending on your choices. And the RPG elements in the game, it was all great. Some things really don't need to change when you have a product this good. You only have to probably update it enough that new audiences can enjoy it the same way we did back in the day. Mm-hmm. But the real issue here for most fans is that people fear that politics and gender stuff is going to be involved in this, and it wasn't there in the original. So, and they're not even subtle about it. We know when they do this, they do it in a bad way, and it ends up ruining the experience.
Yeah, they go too hard at it.
Yeah, if they did it in a good way, I mean, there are shows that I like that have these elements, and they do it in such a great way that we don't really find them troublesome, and they don't mess with the storytelling. So you enjoy the show for what it is, and you don't have a problem with certain characters being male or female or whatever. I mean, it happens to. I usually point out when these discussions come up that I love the Umbrella Academy. And in that show, one of my favorite characters is Klaus, who is gay. So no, it's not that but the character is not written entirely as I am the gay character of this show. He has depth. There's a reason people like him. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm the gay guy. Oh yeah, I'm the black guy. Oh yeah, I'm the Latino guy. No, it's not like that. And that's what we don't want, and that's what we expect that we might get from this kind of people writing the game.
Yeah, I completely agree. If they write it in a different way to make it not as intrusive, you can be inclusive without being intrusive.
Yeah,
That's I guess a way of saying it. So I mean, if as long as they go that route, then there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, no, nothing against inclusion at all. Just do it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, talking about this game, like if it ain't broke, like you said, a product this good probably doesn't need to be changed. So that's why I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can update it. That's not fixing it. That's just adding to it. Whatever you add, now that might break it. If it's not good, but don't try to rewrite the story or something like that. Don't try to. Unless you're trying to make it part of the current canon and some things collide or whatever, which I doubt that anything collides because this is the Old Republic. I don't think anything in that will really touch anything in the new stuff.
No, you can pretty much do whatever you want with this, and it wouldn't affect any of the prequels or sequels or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, unless they have some sort of outside media, like let's say the High Republic, that this might conflict with. Now, I don't even care if it conflicts with the High Republic, to be honest. But that's the thing, though. I mean, they might try to sort of, I guess, connect them. And I mean, that could be a problem. That might not be a problem. It just depends on how they do it. So hopefully they do it right.
If they make Geode playable, I'm sold.
Oh yeah. Let's just have Geode in there. Like, just add him into it. I think Commander Tano can make that work.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was,
nope.
but I lost it. So.
Oh. Well, okay. Since if you think of it, then just start talking. Don't mind me. But if we have nothing else to say on the subject, I mean, at least for now, because we could probably make a longer discussion out of this, but I do want to sort of get into what we were actually here to talk about, which is the what makes Star Wars discussion. Now, I explained this in the last stream, but I'll explain it in this one. Ponder on the question, what makes Star Wars, and at the end, we will give out our answers, basically, what we think makes Star Wars. Because that's really, that question itself is a really important question, because a lot of people think they know what makes Star Wars. And yes, that I guess you could say that it is an opinion of sorts. Your opinion, that is. But some people don't really understand Star Wars in the first place. They just think, oh, it's a big franchise. I just want to be part of the fan base. Or, oh, they do this and that with their new movies. Oh, I'm sold on it now. That kind of stuff. So this is more of a question for longtime fans as well as, I wouldn't say not long time. Never mind. It would, longtime fans, but there really wouldn't be any new fans that would understand this question unless they got into Star Wars and know what the originals and prequels did that makes it Star Wars. I'm sort of rambling at this point, but yes, ponder on the question, what makes Star Wars, and at the end we will talk about that and give what we think makes Star Wars. But anyways, so we're still technically in the what important elements are needed in a Star Wars movie. We've already discussed a lot of them in the last episode. So let's see. I got a few of them that we haven't went through yet, and that is good character development, not depending on outside content, good characters. There's a difference between development and just good characters. Entertainment value, which is something I just added at the end of the last stream, and the nostalgia factor, or rather nostalgia versus fan service. So we'll go ahead and start with the good character development. So which trilogies did it better? We can probably start with the original trilogy since it was the first trilogy. We'll talk about it. And I'll start with Dark Knight this time because he wasn't in the last one, and I feel like he probably has a lot to say about this subject in particular. So, or rather, I'm trying to actually say words. Good character development. Does the original trilogy have good character development?
Oh, obviously. I mean, you have the development of Luke just being a teenage boy on a farm planet into being a Jedi Knight. And it's the evolution of that phase that you see going from him. And then to have the combat of the debate of good versus evil with his father's inner conflict of himself to actually show that he was the last person that believed that his father could be turned good, which obviously happens. And also the development of Han as a character, starting off as just a smuggler, a pirate smuggler, and then, eventually the guy that ends up doing everything right. And he ends up being a general in the rebellion. Same for Leia. Leia has an absolutely amazing story through the entire original trilogy. As she's kind of like that unofficial leader that was, and she becomes the leader of it. But she had the heart of the group, and not to mention, of course, our droids. We love our droids.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's tons of character development with the original trilogy, and it pretty much established the base of how all Star Wars movies were made, even the prequels and the sequels. It's how they kind of base it off of that in a way, and not just Star Wars, other films entirely, like other movie trilogies, they use what George Lucas did, and they pulled things from that. It's a broad view, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I especially love Luke's arc. Like I watched Star Wars Episode 6 the other day on my TV, and I was just like, after let me skip straight to the ending fight because I don't want to talk about the whole movie. The ending fight's what made me really realize how good his development was. Because it had been a little bit since I'd watched the movie, and I guess I never really thought deeply about, especially the ending fight, like I should have. But that whole ending scene where Luke is fighting Vader, the emotion in that scene, especially when you see Luke going all crazy on Vader, you just think about the weight of the galaxy is on his shoulders at this point. And not to mention that he is slowly being turned to the dark side, and he realizes this before he kills Vader himself. After he cuts off his hand and he looks at his hand, he sees that they're both, or that he may be becoming a new Vader. I guess that's sort of a way to look at it. That whole ending scene, especially after he throws his lightsaber away and decides that he's not going to fight anymore because he realized, he got that close to becoming, the new Darth Vader, I guess you could say. At least this is what I'm getting out of it. And then you think about all that he's went through up to this point to make him what he is now, and to be able to turn down the dark side like he did. It's just really interesting to think about that whole arc that he has, and I really, really love it. And, I know that I've talked about how you don't need outside content to, I guess, fill in the gaps, but you get a little more of Luke, especially like in the books, you get a little more of that in there, and you get to see a lot more of that kind of stuff, maybe a little more development to his character, but that's not filling in gaps, that's just adding to it. But anyways, I just love the development of Luke. I sort of went off in a different direction than I meant to. But yeah, I really like that arc, and the development in the original trilogy is amazing. I can give examples later, but we're going to go on to Commander Tano next. If you had nothing else to say about that Dark Knight.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay.
So for the original trilogy, I'm going to say, of course, yes. And also for the prequel trilogy, spoiler, I'm going to say yes. Now, I'm as to the explanation of my answers. It actually kind of fits more of, when we talk about what makes Star Wars Star Wars. So I may reserve that for later.
Yeah. Okay. So, what about you, Chrono, then?
Well, yeah, I agree with you guys. The original trilogy, of course, had excellent character development. And for all the hate some people would throw that way, the prequel trilogy does have a lot of character development. It may be flawed in a lot of other areas, but it does take the time to develop a lot of characters. And I mean a lot because that trilogy has tons of people in it. And we do get to know enough of most of them to care. So yeah, I think character development is definitely not an issue with both trilogies.
See, I agree, especially on the prequel one, because I'll use Maul as an example. We didn't get to see much of him, but we did get a little bit of him, especially since he only had one line. It's hard to believe that he would have become such a fan favorite just from his appearance in that movie, because a lot of people didn't like that he was killed off because they were starting to like his character. And that's why they ended up bringing him back in the Clone Wars. But it just goes to show that you don't have to have a lot of lines in a movie to make you a likable character. It could just be the way the character was directed or written or whatever, you want to say. But yeah, I agree with that.
Even before that, before bringing him back in the Clone Wars, Darth Maul was so popular, he started appearing in comics.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. They were telling stories from before Episode 1, when he fought the crime syndicate with, and it's great because the as you say, the character had like 2 or 3 lines in the whole movie, but we saw enough of him to understand that he was this cool bad guy, and we all immediately wanted more of him. And these people understood that, and even if it wasn't in the movies, if it wasn't the expanded universe in a book, whatever, they gave us more of him because people really liked him.
I guess you could say they wanted. Okay. But since we're already talking about the prequels, we can go ahead and probably start talking about that too. Well, no, I need to probably give my thoughts on the original trilogy first. That would probably be preferable before we move on to something else. The original trilogy. I already talked about Luke's character arc, but that's just one example. I like Han's as well. Maybe not as much as Luke's, but I really like the selfish smuggler to General of the Rebellion, war hero type of arc as well. I mean, in the first movie, he's a little bit annoying if you think about it. All he talks about is getting paid. He's only in it for the money. And that kind of character is a little annoying, but at the same time, he has his moments in that entire movie that make you love him. But those moments when he's complaining about, wanting to be paid, that's annoying. But the fact that he was able to grow out of that, especially after what they had went through with in episode 4, and then, changing him a little bit in episode 5. I mean, he's a lot better in episode 5. So something must have happened in between 4 and 5 to change his character more. I'm pretty sure there's probably some sort of a book out there that I haven't read yet about that, but that's for another time. His character's a little bit different. He's a general in the rebellion. He is, or he's a captain, not general. He becomes a general later, but he's a captain and he's fighting the Empire. I mean, his character development is amazing. They do so much with his character. They show how much he's changed. I really like that whole arc. I'm not like really good at explaining for some reason today. I'm having a hard time. I don't know what it is. It's like my brain's in a fog at the moment. I don't know. Anyways, ignoring the fact that my brain's a foggy mess, let me think of. I think it's what other character was I thinking of? I was thinking of. I know Leia's arc is really good, and I love how they tease that she can be a Jedi, and I love how they were going to set something like that up in the future. Which, of course, if we talk about the sequels, they really don't do much with it except make her into Leia Poppins. But that's just one thing there. Um, they were teasing her to become an actual Jedi. Like they said that she had that power, and in time she will learn to use it. In episode 7 and 8 and 9, she only learned to sense things. Out of all about 30 years, all she learned to do was sense everything, and then somehow become Rey's master. Even though Rey doesn't really need a master, we can go into that later. I'm not going into a rant at the moment, but ignoring the sequel trilogy, her arc was really good. It's in fact really amazing, and it left you hope of what is to come with her character. And if you've read the Thrawn trilogy, the original one, like Heir to the Empire and all them, which I'm working on the second one, Dark Forces Rising or something like that. She's at that point where episode 7 Leia is, but this is 5 years after episode 6. And she's built her own lightsaber. She is like, doing things with it. She's learning how to use the Force a lot better. Now they teased it in episode 9 that she had her own lightsaber and all that stuff, but really she's not much farther than by the end of episode 9 than Leia in the Heir to the Empire books is. So honestly, she didn't learn much during her time, I guess, of being taught by Luke. I don't know. Anyways, ignoring all that, her arc was really nice. Princess to leader of the rebellion, basically, or she wasn't exactly leader, but she was highly impactful to the rebellion. Like, I have nothing but praise for all these story arcs that they had created with the original movies. The Luke and Leia brother sister relationship thing, which I guess you could say was a little weird due to the fact that episode 5 made it a little weird with the Luke and Leia kiss thing. But besides that, I like how they progressed the characters. I like that they gave them relation in a way, I mean, I like that they were actually brother and sister. I think that does improve their characters. It does explain a few things, I guess. I like the reveal of Darth Vader becoming, their father. It's just all it. I don't know. There's just so much about it. I love it. I'm terrible explaining it though for some reason today, so I'll go on to the prequel trilogy. And we'll go ahead and start with Dark Knight on that one. So, give examples, I guess, of good character development in the prequel trilogy.
Good character development?
Yeah.
Well, don't we all just love the sand?
Oh, man. I hate sand. It's coarse, rough, and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
I'd say your best example, as the prequel trilogy entirely, your best character development has to be Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has to be the winner of the character development, just because we knew who Obi-Wan was in the original trilogy, but Ewan McGregor just brought the character Obi-Wan to a whole nother level. And honestly, he's like the unofficial favorite in a way for some people. Like he's just top of level. And that's also, I mean, next year we're getting the Obi-Wan series. I'm super excited for that. But I would say your best example is just, you see, Qui-Gon, obviously, his master dying, and Obi-Wan immediately having to take on a Padawan after him just mainly becoming a Jedi Knight at the end of Phantom Menace. And then it shows the time passing, and not to count the Clone Wars, but there was another period of growth and expansion till you get to Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan is basically a Jedi Master at this point, and
Mhm.
and then the relationship with Anakin, it helped. It helped a lot with Anakin's development, more so in the second movie and the third versus the first. And Palpatine's lore, for the foreshadowing for Palpatine, which we all knew what was going to happen. We get to see how he just had those little seeds planted throughout each movie to get to the point where we were getting to. That was also excellent.
Oh yeah.
Yoda was just, I mean, Yoda's Yoda. He was kind of, he was just there in a way, but he was Yoda about it. And
Yeah.
Mace Windu, fantastic. The Padme stuff, it didn't really. I mean, to me, that's just bad casting. Not to say anything bad about Natalie Portman. I just don't think her or Hayden Christensen had a good chemistry behind the scenes either. They were just picked to be who they were. So yeah, I'd say from the prequels side of things, your story of Obi-Wan from becoming the leaving Padawan to Jedi Knight to transition to Jedi Master, and seeing the fall of his basically his brother turning evil, that probably was your best character development of that trilogy.
I totally agree with that. You got anything else to say on that before I move on to anybody else?
Oh, go ahead.
All right, Commander Tano, what do you think is the best or one of the best examples of character development in the prequels?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with the Kenobi kind of winning out. Yeah, honestly, there's nothing I could add that hasn't already been said.
Kenobi is just that great.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm also kind of holding back a bit for some of this for later. But yeah, I think Kenobi by far that. There's just it was good casting. And yeah, it is interesting, like how often sometimes people in their criticisms of those movies forget about that. Like, that there seems to be so much focus on just maybe the lines that say were given to Anakin and Padme's characters and things like that. But yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well, I gotta say, like, yes, there was some questionable lines, and especially episode 2. I think is probably the worst for the at least the writing. But it wasn't exactly a bad movie. But the writing between Anakin and Padme wasn't exactly the greatest. I mean, using "I hate sand" as a pickup line isn't exactly my version of trying to get a girl. So
it's like at this point, it's aged so much that it's almost endearing, like in its own strange way. but yeah, it's obviously the difference being, we've talked about this so many times. It's like it's like people who like those movies can enjoy that stuff and make fun of it and laugh at it. But I do think overall, like I think I'd vote yes for that trilogy and character development.
Okay, awesome. And what about you, Chrono?
I agree. Kenobi would be the strongest example of character development in a trilogy, because we see him in all 3 movies, and we learn a lot of him in all 3 movies, because we see him as a Padawan, as a Jedi Knight, and then as a Jedi Master. And we know he's been through this journey, we see it, but the way they portray it from beginning to end in that particular trilogy, that is awesome. I mean, you don't even need the Clone Wars stuff you learn of him. You don't even need comic books or novels. The movies did it great. If you had only seen the movies and you only knew Obi-Wan Kenobi from that, you would have a great experience with him because it's so complete.
Yeah.
And the other good example I can think of is actually his master Qui-Gon Jinn, because he only gets one movie, and
Yes.
that we never see anything else from him. But that one movie was enough to tell us who he was. We didn't have development in the sense that he was already an established character, but we really got to know who he was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that they did this very well for a lot of characters that aren't necessarily seen through all three movies, but we still know who they are and we care about them.
Oh yeah, I agree. Palpatine and Qui-Gon are probably underneath Obi-Wan in the trilogy, but Palpatine and Qui-Gon, like they're both very well developed characters. I really like what they did with Palpatine through that whole thing. They showed him as a senator, and then they showed him as chancellor, then they showed him as emperor. But during that time, you were able to see. Well, since we already knew who he was, of course, we were going to see through what he was actually doing. But you can see all the little things that he does, like in terms of, let's say, manipulation, especially in episode 3. He's the most manipulative in episode 3. But you can see all the moments throughout the entire trilogy that he starts to manipulate things. I mean, of course, we already know he's the emperor in the original trilogy, but the fact that we get to see how he became emperor really makes his character that much greater. And we only got one movie in the original trilogy. Well, technically two, but one movie where he was actually a highly used character. I can't even think of a word for that. He a very important character. He was in the movie a lot. He was very important to the plot of the movie. Not so much in episode 5. He wasn't even. He was only mentioned in episode 4 once near the beginning. So a character like that, we already liked the Emperor because he was just enjoyable to watch in the original movie that he showed up in. But we get to see how he became that. We get more character development about what his personality was like and all that stuff throughout the prequel trilogy. I think the prequel trilogy really did justice to Palpatine's character and gave us a lot of insight to how he thinks. So that's one example right there that I can think of that I personally enjoyed almost as much as Obi-Wan's. I think there was like one more character that I was thinking of. Now I can't think of it.
Actually, it's worthy of praise because in Palpatine's case, it was tricky because we knew who he was and we know what he becomes, but that makes it harder for them to present it at that point because Obi-Wan was always a Jedi. I mean, he was a Padawan, he was a knight, he was a master, and then he was this old exiled man who used to be a Jedi. But he's still the same thing, and Palpatine wasn't. And we saw him as not the Emperor in that in that trilogy. We know he becomes the Emperor, but we don't see him as Emperor in those movies. So it would have been easy for them to mess up and not do it as good as you are describing, but they did a great job because we do see his politician side rather than the emperor, because when he's emperor, he's like this absolute figure that just commands stuff to be done and it's done. And we see the hard part that when he orders people killed and planets destroyed and all that. But to see the political aspect when he's plotting how to rise to power, that is great.
Yeah, I agree. And I was also going to mention earlier, this is about Qui-Gon this time. He only had one movie. Yes, he was supposed to be in episode 2, and I think possibly in episode 3, but he wasn't. His voice was in episode 2. He was supposed to be a Force Ghost, I guess, or Force Vision or something. I can't remember. He got in Liam Neeson got in a motorcycle accident and couldn't be in the movie. But that's just a little fun fact. And you can look it up. As far as I know, that is 100% the truth. Just paraphrased shortly. Anyways, so But the thing is, Qui-Gon's character was used in a much deeper sense. And I personally really like that he was defiant to the Jedi Order because or the Council, because that just gives us a little development on, first of all, his character, and it gives us a little bit of world building if you think about it, because we're getting to see how the Council is viewed by other Jedi, namely Qui-Gon at this point. But not everybody holds up with how the Council, does things. Some Jedi worship the Force differently. Even though he may be part of the Jedi Order, he's doing it differently than the Council would, prefer. And maybe he's seen what we've seen with how the Jedi may be too into the political side of the galaxy instead of just, being keepers of the peace, as they say. So Qui-Gon's character is a much deeper character, and even though he just got one movie, you get everything you need with that first movie. Then you get a little bit of a tease of his character in the second movie. You're thinking, why do we hear Qui-Gon's voice yelling, "Anakin, no"? And then the third movie sort of explains that little bit from episode 2, if you think about it, because Yoda says that an old friend has learned to come back, I guess, from the dead. I'm not saying it correctly, but basically he found a path back to the physical world, but he's not exactly a physical being. So how to commune with him, I will teach you. I remember how he said that line. But they mentioned Qui-Gon at that point, and they mentioned that he has discovered the path to immortality, basically. Return from the netherworld of the Force. I think that's how the line went. And that's how we get a bit of that of an explanation as to why Qui-Gon's voice showed up in episode 2. And that also implies that, Qui-Gon is a Force ghost. Well, you don't see him at the end of episode 6, but that paves the way for how about how Force ghosts were to become a thing, because they didn't really show any Force ghosts in the movies until the original trilogy. And even in the original trilogy, the first movie didn't have a Force ghost; it just had Obi-Wan's voice. And Qui-Gon is at this point just a voice. They even show it in the Clone Wars. I think it's the Lost Missions season. I think they call that season the Lost Missions. It's 13 episodes, but the ones with the wheels in it, the 4 episodes with the wheels, Qui-Gon is a part of those episodes. He's just a disembodied voice guiding Yoda to this place and that place, guiding him through what he needs to do. And that's how Yoda knows how to become a Force ghost as well, because Qui-Gon had taught him. So Qui-Gon's character is much deeper than, what any character in the sequel trilogy is, because no character in the sequel trilogy has been able to create such a deep connection with the lore like Qui-Gon has. Qui-Gon is a very eccentric character.
You mean Rey, who's a master Jedi by episode 7, is not as good as lore as Qui-Gon?
She breaks lore, but she's so powerful. I guess she can afford to break lore with her power. So
Ultimate power.
Yes. Palpatine is now the least powerful character compared to Rey. So, but she is a Palpatine, which is another thing that we can talk about later. But yeah, Qui-Gon has really created a lot of possibilities for lore, as well as his character is just one of the fan favorites, and a lot of people wish to see him again in a Star Wars movie, maybe a prequel to Episode 1, maybe a part of a TV show. I don't know, maybe a Force ghost. I mean, a lot of people wanted him to show up in the Kenobi series. Now, whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. I doubt it, because I think he said something like Liam Neeson. I think he said something about not ever being contacted for it, which I think is dumb. That's a missed opportunity right there. But, if the show's good, it's good. I'm not going to complain. but that's a missed opportunity, and that's one big opportunity to show what Qui-Gon did for Obi-Wan to teach him how to become a Force Ghost, basically. But all in all, back to character development. Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Palpatine, I think, had the best character development throughout the entirety of the prequel trilogy. I mean, there's some other characters that have some good character development, like Count Dooku. In just the 2 movies he had, you get to see Count Dooku. I'm not going to go all into that because we got more to talk about. But Count Dooku's character development was pretty good too. You get to learn a lot about his character just from what little he was in the movie. Maybe not enough of his character because they seem to kill off characters in the prequels a little more quickly than they did in the original trilogy. You couldn't just have one villain. But these villains are all very iconic to the Star Wars canon. So, I mean, they must have done something right with them. Anyways, we can now move on to the sequel trilogy.
Yay.
The least controversial trilogy there's ever been made.
Yeah.
We've got nothing to say about it.
Everybody universally agrees it is great.
Yeah, exactly. The best trilogy ever made. That's why it's, scoring 2.
The most talked about trilogy ever made.
Well, yeah, I'd say you're probably right there. Right now, the scores are 7 for the original trilogy, 7 for the prequel trilogy, and 2 for the sequel trilogy. Oh, man. Okay. But maybe we'll change that after this discussion about the character development in the sequel trilogy. Maybe we'll discover a gem or something like that while talking about it. So I sort of want to start on this one, so I think I'm going to. I personally think that they're like the only character in this movie that had any sort of character development at all was Kylo Ren. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but Kylo, I think we got more character development from him than we did anybody else.
Yep.
Rey,
Yeah.
The character development clip, please.
I mean, besides maybe this, I mean, we got to see
that's character development, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that. Besides this right here, he did have some more character development throughout the trilogy, which Kylo Ren is one of my favorite characters in the sequel trilogy. I mean, I like Finn and Poe as well. So I think the big 3, those 3 that is, are the best characters in the entire sequel trilogy. That's not talking about the legacy characters that, for the most part, they ruined in their movies. But their characters themselves, we love. What they did with them, we don't. So Kylo Ren got a lot of character development. He, which not that I agree with how the story exactly went, but they actually did develop his character. And I mean, he was just a young boy that had been seduced to the dark side. Luke decided they wanted to kill his nephew, and that's when he decided, you know what, I'm going to be a dark side user. So he goes out, does a lot of dark side stuff. By episode 7, he is just running around doing stuff with the First Order. And I guess with his Knights of Ren buddies that he doesn't spend time with until episode 9. I just love how I'm explaining this one. He finds out about the map to Skywalker, or the final piece of the map, and he goes on a hunt for it because he wants, I guess, to get revenge on Luke for what he did. I mean, that's what I'm guessing. I mean, they don't really talk about why they needed to find Luke exactly. I guess they thought he was a threat, but apparently he wasn't. But that's not the point of this discussion. So he's looking for the map. We get to learn a lot about his past. Not so much in the first movie, but we do get a reveal that his mom and dad is Han and Leia, which is very interesting. I mean, I sort of expected it when the movie came out. I was expecting that, but nothing really indicated it so much until they actually said, "Your father is on the Millennium Falcon," and that's when we realized, oh, that's Luke, not Luke's, Han and Leia's son. I was about to say Luke and Leia. Han and Leia's that was Han and Leia's son. That's some development right there.
No, that would have been a twist.
But yeah. I mean, we sort of expected it though, so I doubt that is much of a twist. But that is development. Episode 8 is where we get the most development on Kylo, and we find out that Luke tried to kill him or thought about killing him or something like that, and that's when he joined the dark side or joined Snoke, and you get to see like how he struggles to, kill his mom because he was going to kill her, but he decided that he didn't want to. That's a good character development moment right there. Oh, well, I didn't even talk about how he killed his dad. So he kills his dad thinking, oh, I'm going to be stronger in the dark side. He really wants to be a Darth Vader-ish character. That's sort of how the whole movie sort of portrays him as somebody that follows the teachings of, or not exactly teachings, but follows the example of Vader. He collects multiple relics that are in relation to Darth Vader. He probably has Obi-Wan's lightsaber. He probably has Vader's lightsaber, for all I know. I mean, he also wanted Anakin's lightsaber. I mean, I talk about them like they're separate people, but so does Star Wars, so I can do that. But Anakin's original lightsaber, he wanted that, but he was never able to get it because Wonder Ray decided to take it. I'm trying to think of what other examples I can give in that movie. I mean, the one thing I'm not a fan of is how he turns into a baby when he gets angry, a baby that takes a temper tantrum. But besides that, I mean, that's character development. I mean, who else in the trilogy has had that much character development in the entire trilogy? I mean, I think he got more character development in the second movie than he did the first one, but all the character development he had combined was way more than Rey got. Rey was the same throughout the whole thing until episode 9, where she started to actually get angry at things and somewhat fail and shock people and almost kill Chewie because, she's weird. Anyways, I'm trying to think. So Kylo,
of course, Rey didn't need any character development. She's the bestest ever.
Oh yeah, she's already developed. That's how powerful she is. She was already written perfectly. She needed no development. We should have already been able to understand where she's coming from. We should have been able to understand how she feels about this and that, because, she's Rey. She relates to everybody. More relatable than Luke in the original trilogy. I can honestly say that she is probably more relatable than sequel trilogy Luke. But
yeah,
that's saying something too.
and that's not helping the movie.
No, it's not helping the movie. I mean, Mark Hamill performed really well. He did his job really well. So I'm not talking about Mark Hamill's acting or anything like that. He is amazing in everything that he does. But back to what I was saying about Kylo Ren. By episode 9, he's still wanting to control the galaxy. And he tries to get Rey to join him multiple times. You get to see how he cares for Rey. He cares for Rey. If only I had them kissing as a clip, that would be that would be a perfect moment for that. Like he really wants Rey to join him, so he does everything in his power to try to, exploit her her anger that she is feeling and her lust for revenge for this and that, So it's all that kind of stuff. You get to see how he starts to change though in this movie. Like after Ray takes a cheap shot at him while he's distracted by his mother using the Force, who could have gotten him killed if Ray had decided not to learn Force healing like that. I mean, he was going to die if she didn't have Force healing. Which Force healing, they use Force healing. I'm not even going to talk about that. No, I'm not going into that. That's a whole discussion. That I'm willing to talk about, but not right now. I'm rambling as it is. So he loses the fight to a cheap shot that Ray takes at him, and he after she heals him, he begins to realize, I may be on the wrong side. And then he gets like this moment where he talks to his dad. Now the scene, I don't know how to describe this scene. It's a really good scene between Han and Ben Solo. I really did enjoy it, even though it don't really make much sense. It is a really nice scene to watch. I mean, it's Ben trying to cope with what he has done, and maybe it's like some sort of Force vision or something like that he is seeing, which would probably explain that. But maybe it's like the Force using his dad's imagery to bring him to the light side, which would be an interesting way to show his return to the light. I personally enjoyed it. It was a very touching scene, and he's like, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. It was almost like a replay of Episode 7 scene, and I like the callback. But he says that Han basically says that he does, and he throws his lightsaber, denouncing the dark side. The whole arc that he has with a few minor things, was actually really good for the most part. I can't really say that much about anybody else. They started some nice stuff with, let's say, Finn and Poe. They ruined their characters in the next movie. Like, Finn almost had a really good sacrificial scene. And, well, we all know how that went. But I'm going to stop talking about that right now and say that if we were going to base the sequel trilogy on Kylo Ren's development, they would get a point. Anybody else's, though? No. But I'll go on to Dark Knight over here and let you say what you think is probably the best example, or if it has any good examples in your opinion of character development. You just say what you want to say. Go ahead.
So, the sequel trilogy. What character development was good in the sequel trilogy, you ask?
Yes.
Well, obviously, the character development of Rey was the greatest thing that ever happened in this entire trilogy, and it made all the other Star Wars movies look like trash, and Rey is the greatest Star Wars character in the history of Star Wars. JK.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just like, I probably just got everybody like, whoa. But anyways, no, I'm just kidding.
Actually, if I didn't know you were joking, this would be happening to you right now.
Yeah. Okay.
I had to bring that clip in, by the way. I just had to.
So I guess, anyways, what development there was for that trilogy? Because to me, 7 happened. JJ kind of played neutral with that movie. Like he gave it some new, but kept it very recycled material that made everybody happy. And then, Rian Johnson comes in and does a complete 360 on that and just tears down everything that JJ did. And then episode 9 happens, and JJ's kind of doing damage control is what damage control they have. And to me, The Last Jedi does not exist in The Rise of Skywalker. The only thing that exists in The Rise of Skywalker was The Force Awakens. Those felt like a true sequel from each other. You barely see anything from The Last Jedi carry over. Or
the only thing that did was Snoke's death.
And just going back to the island. Well, that was in 7 too, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would say your best development, I would have to say, is Kylo Ren. He kind of was the face of that trilogy. And
Well,
I
he
mean,
should have been.
yeah, should have been. And Ray, they had something going for Ray. They did. And then it's just they kept. She was a Mary Sue through the entire thing. Didn't discover who she was till the very end. And I guess there was such bigger plans for her than what ended up happening, unfortunately. So, I mean, Luke. I want to say this about Luke real quick because we all love Luke. He's one of the best. I hate what they did with him in The Last Jedi in regards to Star Wars as a whole. But I did enjoy his story in that movie if that was just self-contained. If that makes any sense.
Oh no, that does make total sense.
But the bigger picture, no, I was not a fan of the bigger picture. But if it was if that was its own thing, like that would have been fine. I actually would have liked to have dwelled more into that and seen what more that hermit Luke was all about. But yeah, it has to be Kylo. I mean, I don't know much. I mean, Finn, he had some stuff going for him till they butchered it too. I mean, let's just do a side quest and go to a casino planet with a new character that nobody asked for. I mean, let's just derail that entire story.
I mean, even Ryan Johnson himself said that character didn't fit in Star Wars, and that's why he added her in there.
Yeah. And, Poe, I think Poe was meant to be your next Han Solo. I think that was the original plan, because I think the sequel trilogy, the original plan never happened. It was just, they had an idea, and then it got gutted because they didn't have an outline. They didn't plan out the trilogy. I think there was completely different. I think the characters that we had there was supposed to be a lot more that was supposed to happen that just didn't happen, because that's what happens when you swap out a different director each movie. I mean, it's just not gonna. Each director wants to bring their own take to the film, but you just can't do that with a trilogy as big as what this was. So, I guess Kylo has to be the best development, and I'm sure that his story changed multiple times each movie, but fortunately it just worked what they did, even though they probably switched different ideas around for what was originally supposed to happen with him.
Yeah,
that's pretty much all I can say about that.
All right, what about you, Commander Tana?
So if this category had been called character germination instead of character development, then I'd give a yes to the sequel trilogy. But it's character development, so it's, and obviously if we want to give good examples of development, I think everything that's been said about Kylo Ren and Han Solo, that's all on point. I agree 110%. I feel like the big issue with characters in the sequel trilogy is that it's not necessarily that you've got a bunch of bad characters. It's more so I see the issue is you've got good characters put in the wrong roles. And like I can't remember if I said this last week or the week prior, but take for instance Holdo. Admiral Gender Studies. Okay. She's actually a really great character if you actually put her in the role of a villain. Just the perfect kind of bureaucrat who has no business, kind of making military decisions and flustering all of the competent people who are under her. Like, that actually really works. But that's the thing. That's the kind of character you put in a villain or antagonist role. And I think it's, for other examples, I mean, everyone talks about Finn deserving better. I think Finn seemed to be primed to be put into this more archetypical hero role, but that didn't really pan out. That it was something that was kind of toyed with, just like kind of, it's like you can kind of, Finn's character arc is kind of represented in the whole kind of Ray, I have something to tell you thing. It's like it feels like oh, we're going to do something with this character and then kind of just keep him stuck at kind of like comic relief janitor thing, or other characters like like in the case of Rose, I could write actually a good Rose. I would actually keep that initial core that you see of Rose, but the thing is because I would move that character forward because from having this very as you can tell with Rose, she has an extremely naive and sheltered kind of form of morality. Her just very kind of like, oh, these rich people bad, resistance good. There's only first order resistance. It's I would take a character like that and expose her to other characters and situations that would force her to change her views and evolve her morality and her view of the world, and actually turn her into a likable, sympathetic character. But that didn't happen. Any of those characters, I think, could be, improved by just placing them in a different role, or just giving don't kind of settle with the don't settle with kind of the morality and ethical viewpoint that those characters have at the beginning. Allow them to step out of that and evolve. So yeah, and we don't see that really in the sequels. We see and I think that's why people get frustrated with them, is because it's not necessarily because it's all rubbish. It's just that it's all the more frustrating. It's like if you're like working on a jigsaw puzzle and then someone else comes along and like wants to help on the puzzle, and they like jam a piece in that almost kind of fits but doesn't quite, and it messes up the whole puzzle, and you just want them to go away. It's kind of like it's like I feel like with the Force Awakens, we kind of got the beginnings of what could have been good progress on the puzzle, and then Rian Johnson came in and put in like a couple of pieces in the wrong, like turned them the wrong ways. And then J.J. Abrams came back to the puzzle, but instead of fixing, it's like he almost kind of doubled down in some ways on it. It's just kind of like it's a whole mess. But yeah, so those are my thoughts. Obviously, there are some things that Kylo Ren, yeah, that was well done. And I do get the criticism that they kind of took Han Solo a bit backwards and making him just a smuggler again, all of that. But I did like in The Force Awakens as far as character development, because for me, like in the original trilogy, and this is why my favorite character, it wasn't Luke Skywalker, it was Han Solo, because he was just funny and snarky and cynical. And that was the role that he played. And so it was kind of, it was really strange, but like in a good way to see, especially that scene, when he's trying to get his son back and he kills him, and all that was really well done. And it was I looked at that character much differently after that. So I think those two characters, like I liked generally what was done with their arcs, but everything else, it's like, yeah, great on character germination, but not good on following through.
One thing I didn't even mention the regression of characters that much. And you did mention that a lot of people think that they took Han Solo a couple steps back, and in a way they did. But I do like Han Solo doesn't change a whole lot, but personality wise, and what they did with him in The Force Awakens, it felt like Han Solo, even though that he and Leia had divorced, I guess, or separated, I don't know. But even though they aren't together, like you still get that same old Han, the wonderful acting of Harrison Ford. It felt like a Han Solo that he played in that one. So they really didn't do bad as far as like the direction of his character. Maybe the only real thing I gripe about is that he left Leia. It's showing as much as they loved each other. You wouldn't think that he would do that. And maybe it's just me after reading Heir to the Empire, because you get a lot of Han and Leia stuff in Heir to the Empire. I can't honestly see Han and Leia separating. That's the only thing out of character that I think happened to Han in that movie. So Han actually was, for the most part, Han Solo. I don't complain about his acting or what they did with his character as much. That's one thing. One other thing about the sequels that I think they actually failed in, because the prequels did this best. The original trilogy also had this thing going on, but they do it right. So they show the world as black and white. One side good, one side bad. The prequels make everything gray, if you get what I mean. And as Palpatine says, good as a point of view. So you're seeing like different points of view. That's sort of the point of the term, from a certain point of view. They mention that a lot throughout Star Wars. And then they go from this, like, not everything is as it seems type of way of thinking, which they sort of tried to bring it back in episode 8, but that's just one scene. The whole theme of the original trilogy was sort of, or the prequel trilogy was sort of good as a point of view. The sequel trilogy goes back to the one side good, one side bad, everything black and white. And there's that one scene where you find out that the people that are supplying the rebellion are also supplying the First Order. So
that's what frustrated me, is that you did have that scene, but it didn't seem to have any effect on Rose. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I feel like there should have been something that resulted from that, but it just kind of was like, oh, that's a thing, and then move on.
Yeah, exactly. It's just there. I'm like, everything in the prequel trilogy was like, as Palpatine said, good as a point of view. And guess what? That stuff like that, things that he said like that, affected Anakin. He started questioning what was right and what was wrong. He questioned whether he was on the right side or not. Rose, she's one of those people, you tell her that she's wrong, like, no, I'm right. At least that's what it sounds like in the Last Jedi. So, there's nothing really came of this gray area stuff that they tried to throw in the Last Jedi. As opposed to the prequel trilogy, like I mentioned, there was a lot of gray area stuff that did have an effect on characters, such as Anakin. So, and also it gets you thinking about whether which side is right and which side is wrong, or if both sides are right in their own way or wrong in their own way. So it gets you thinking about everything. But in the original trilogy, in which, of course, the way they wanted to go with it, and it makes sense for them to do the black and white junk, but it was all black and white. You knew one side was bad, you knew one side was good. They don't really have any of that gray area stuff, as far as unless there's like some sort of example I'm not thinking of, but they don't really have a scene like that. And which, it's okay, it works. But the thing is, though, like, it wasn't meant to do that. It was made to be what it is, and that's what it is. The sequel trilogy tried so many different things and ended up not really making as much sense as it should. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. But you got anything else to say on that, Commander Tano?
I will say, like, you know, because just kind of along the lines of comparing the kind of black and white worldview you see in the original trilogy versus sequel trilogy. One difference I didn't notice is, say, the difference between the rebellion and the resistance is that the rebellion at least seems to be more okay with individual characters kind of going off on their own path, whether it's, you know, like when it's like Empire Strikes Back, when Han's like, hey, I gotta leave and do this thing, they're like, okay, we'll miss you, see you, or Luke is, going off on his own missions. I kind of like that the rebellion, like, it's there, but it doesn't feel intrusive. Whereas it's like, if Finn wants to go off and go on his own hero's mission, it's like, no, you can't. Like, sorry, you gotta. You're doing what we say you're going to do, and you're working for us.
The thing is about that, like, the rebellion is more of a volunteer thing. You volunteer to rebel against an empire. It's not that they're like this big setup military, and that goes for the resistance, because they're just a group of people that are trying to fight the First Order. They're not like this big organized military force like the New Republic was supposed to have, but somehow got defeated in the first movie. Apparently there wasn't any New Republic forces that could help at the Battle of Crate. So, I mean, why do they act like they have complete control over everybody there? They're mostly just volunteers fighting against an order they don't want to see rise up over their galaxy. But you know, that's just how I think of it, and I just completely agree with everything you said. So, yeah. You got anything else to say on that, or are we good to move on?
Let's move on.
All right, Chrono. We haven't gotten to you yet. So, what are your thoughts on character development in the sequel trilogy? Good examples, whatever. Just give me something.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what you guys have been saying. I mean, the only good example would be Kylo Ren, because he's the only one who actually gets developed through the whole thing. I really disliked the treatment they gave both Poe and Finn, because I think they have a lot of potential to be good characters, and they really do nothing with them. All we know about Finn is that he left because he didn't like what he saw, and that he was basically brainwashed into being a stormtrooper, and then he tries to leave in the second movie because he's afraid, and nothing much comes from him. I mean, he's basically there just to move forward with the plot. He does nothing on his own. You really don't care about him at all. And I think that's really regrettable, because he did have potential. As for Rey, well, we all know that it's not that Rey's a bad character. It's just that they made her into another plot device. I mean, she's supposed to be perfect. She's supposed to be able to do it all.
Yep.
Which is kind of funny, because these people really don't understand how the hero's journey works. I mean, she earns nothing, so how are we supposed to connect with her? Exactly. And by the end of the trilogy, we know nothing about her other than she apparently is a Palpatine.
Yeah.
I mean, if you consider what we know of her at the beginning of the trilogy and what we know of her at the end, we learn one thing, and that was her real last name, That's what we learned from Rey in 3 movies.
That's true. That's
I mean-
true. I mean, just look at Luke and Anakin. You can say a lot about their past and what you know about them. And then there's Rey, who we just find out, oh, she's a Palpatine. Well, what else is she? Scavenger? What planet was she originally from? I don't know, but she was put on Jakku after her parents abandoned her. So, I mean, that's literally all you can say. You don't really
And
know
that,
much.
that could have been a great way to explore her past. I mean, we saw her visions of the moment she's left there. They should have explored that. I mean, that was good material for her, and they didn't.
Yeah.
We're left knowing that she remembers being left on that planet, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. You got something to say, Commander Tano?
I was just thinking, you're bringing up Rey. Like, first of all, this is a whole other conversation. But what so frustrated me about learning about Rey's parents was then afterwards, like, not learning more about Rey's parents. I'm like, they would have been fat. And I get tired of kind of the dead parents trope, but I wish I wish there was some way to not kill, not have her parents killed off and have her find her parents or something like that. But yeah, I find kind of the idea of them fascinating, especially her dad. It's like if he just did kind of the force power skipping a generation, evidently. Like I don't know. I was very interested in them, and so it's kind of a shame that we're really never going to learn anything about them. But the other thing with Rey is something that they could have done to, and this is terrible, but to improve her character development exponentially. And I still actually don't know how I feel about this, but the scene where she thinks that she killed off Chewie, it's like on the one hand, I do not want Chewie killed off. So maybe you could put someone else on that ship, but to actually have her like kill someone that she cared about, trying to use her force powers that way, because she just can't. She just can't. She's inexperienced and can't control them. I feel like allowing something like that to happen, for there to be some consequences to her having those powers, that would have improved things a lot. But of course, we didn't get that.
See, that's the thing. She doesn't have consequences of any of her actions. That's the problem. Usually, if you fail, there's consequences to your failure. Just look at Luke. When he failed to defeat Vader, first of all, he lost a hand. Second of all, Han Solo was put in carbonite and they got away with him. Like the whole thing, like everything that happened at the end of Episode 5 happened because Luke decided to rush in and not finish his training as he was, instructed by Obi-Wan and Yoda. But, I mean, in the end, everything worked out. But he lost a hand and he lost the fight. Not to mention he was the burden of knowing that his father was the Dark Lord, Darth Vader. Like, that didn't help either. There's consequences to your actions. If you rush in and think that you can take him, well, we all know how that happened, how that worked with Anakin in Episode 2. But I'm just thinking of him saying, "No, I'm taking him now." Oh man, which I think in a way that's a reference to how Luke decided to take Vader on prematurely. If you think about it, now I never thought of it that way until just now, but that's actually quite fascinating to think about as well. But there's consequences to actions, and Rey does not ever get any consequences. If she thinks she's got a consequence coming, well, guess what? It gets fixed like that. So,
like Rise of Skywalker, the entire movie was just kidding. It's like, oh, killed off Chewie. No, I was just kidding. He's fine. Oh, he killed off C-3PO. Oh, no worry. His memory's back. But yeah, there was no one ever to just cut off Rey's arm, and that's the problem.
yeah, she didn't lose something important. Like, she doesn't lose anything. She gains everything. The only thing that she loses is Ben Solo. That's literally it. And he shouldn't have died. Why couldn't they just both force heal each other? Think about it. They just both lay their hands on each other and just force heal each other. Why couldn't that have worked? That's
because you can't redeem people. You have to kill them off.
Yeah, redemption deaths are sort of stupid if they're overdone. They work if they're not overdone. But,
also, Kylo is a white male, so there's no need to let him live.
Oh, that's true. That's true. There's too many of those, especially in the movie industry. So we got to kill off a few of their white characters. Next thing you know, Rey will somehow have had a daughter from forced conception. That's a new force power where you're able to inseminate a female with, or whatever, I guess, with the force. Anyways,
don't say that. The story group's probably listening in and is thinking that's a great idea.
Oh gosh, no, I didn't mean it. But I mean, that's how crazy things have gotten. You can think of something like that and almost think, oh my gosh, this is almost entirely possible at this point, and that's not good because they've already got hyperspace tripping. I mean, what's to stop them from doing forced conception? I mean, they've already had forced children like Anakin and apparently Rey, but well, more importantly, Anakin because he didn't have a dad. But like, what's to stop them from turning that into a separate force power?
That's the thing. It's like the story group would probably use Anakin as a reason to do that. And it's like, no, at least in the movies, it's presented as just, I don't like to use the word magic, but let's just go with magic. You know, it was just kind of the will of the Force that he, you know, it was kind of a unique supernatural event that happened. It's not something that an individual can just kind of, you know, summon at will and make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a way they were originally going to go in a direction where Palpatine had created Anakin like that, but I don't know if there's any media that any sources of media in the Star Wars Legends canon, that is. I don't think there is any in current canon that help out that argument. I think there was like going to be a scene originally where Palpatine says that I am your father, basically. So, I mean, I think in a way they were originally going that route where Palpatine can like influence the midichlorians, I guess, in a character or a person to create light.
I've heard that too, and it's like I'm glad at least, you know, at least how it's presented in the movie that they don't go with that. It just would seem a little too on the nose, especially to have to turn it into another "I am your father" kind of reveal.
Yeah, I mean, then we'd have to call him Anakin Palpatine.
Oh,
and that would.
And I'm sorry, okay, so. Ooh.
Yeah, he wouldn't be a Skywalker, and neither would Luke.
Well,
Luke Palpatine.
Well, no, and I'm also thinking of the implications for Rey and Ben Solo, and okay, so wait, so that would mean,
Lord.
Yeah, so Anakin and Rey's dad are Palpatine's children. Rey, granddaughter. Okay, so Rey, Luke, Leia, Han are cousins, and so that means. Okay, so she and Ben are like first cousins once removed, or I forget how the whole system works, but
either way, it's Alabama all the way.
We love our Alabama viewers.
We love you guys. We're just kidding. It's a stereotype, people. Get over it. You should hear the stereotypes about Kentucky. Fun stuff. We basically get the same implications that people from Alabama get. So, I mean, it's, you know, same thing. Just different
I'm the
places.
token East Coast elite here.
Yeah, exactly. We have to have somebody in the stream representing that, okay? I represent the redneck, You represent
The coastal
token-
elites.
Yes, the coastal elites, and then I have Chrono. I can't even say words at this point. Representing
Latinx representation.
Yes, yeah. That I don't know why I couldn't say it. Maybe it's because I'm a white male. I can't say anything to do with representation because it scares me.
Yeah, remember the X
terrible.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm the X.
Yeah.
We love it.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Because-
the X especially.
Because Spanish is a misogynistic language that needs to be corrected by English speakers.
Saying X at the end of everything would be annoying. I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you say that because you're a racist.
Oh, sorry. I can't help it. It's the white male in me. Oh man. Okay. Back to what we were saying though. Anakin Palpatine. Ew. Luke Palpatine. Even more ew. That would mean that that Luke is like or not Luke, but Palpatine is like a great grandfather to Rey somehow, or a grandfather to Rey. No, it'd be a great grandfather, I'd say.
So that would make it the Palpatine saga then.
It would be. It wouldn't even be Skywalker Saga. So that's one decision that I'm glad they didn't make in the prequel trilogy. But I mean, that would fall under the Force conception thing that they can turn into a Force power, which I'm glad they didn't. I think it'd be sort of dumb. I mean, it's sort of interesting to think about because Palpatine being that powerful, able to create life like that is interesting. But if he had done that, then it would be the Palpatine saga. It wouldn't even be the Skywalker saga. So, and plus, some of the relationships, as Commander Tano pointed out, might be a little incestual, as they say. So, not exactly the way I want to go. But anyways, you got anything else to say, Chrono, about the sequel trilogy's character development, or you want to move on?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, so we finally got through the character development, which was, the sequel trilogy. Do you guys believe deserves a point at all for anything, or no?
No.
No. Okay. So, good answer. All right, we got like 1, 2, 3, 4 more things to talk about. We might get through them. Maybe we might have to do a part 3 to this because there is a lot. We're not even done with the important elements part, and we got 1, 2, 3 other things to talk about. Oh,
How long did
Lord.
we take to get through one? Like,
Well,
Fourth for the fourth.
no, I might do like a compilation thing where I put all of the streams together, and then it'll be like a 6-hour stream or video or something.
only
Because-
6 hours?
12 for the fourth.
Only 6. It might even be up to 9. I mean, depending on if I can't remember how long the first one was. It might have been 3 hours long. If this was 3 hours and then the next discussion is 3 hours, then that's a 9-hour 3-part thing that we just did. So that's a long time to spend on this current subject. But since we are spending a long time on this current subject, we might as well get on with it and try to get some of it done. So this is a good one. And I'm sure I'm already, you know what? I'm already going to give the original trilogy and prequel trilogy points for this because we already know that the sequel trilogy did not do this. They're not depending on outside content to fill in the holes. This is one important element that a Star Wars movie or trilogy needs to have. Like if you have to fill in the holes using let's say the novelization of the movie, not everybody's going to read the novelization, so everybody's going to be looking at the movie like, so why did this happen to this character? Like it felt like there was no lead up to it. It felt like it's out of character for this person, or has this person know this person? Oh, you got to read a book for that? Well, I don't want to read the book. I already watched the movie. Do I care that much about these details to want to read the book? Maybe. Oh, they got comics on it too. I'd rather probably read comics, but still, I don't want to buy other media to get the whole story that should have been in the movie. So that's sort of, you know, that's one thing that the original and prequel trilogies didn't do. And I'll use two books in particular, and that I've mentioned a lot on my time here on YouTube: the Plagueis book and the Heir to the Empire. These books enhance the experience and expand the lore. It doesn't fill in holes that weren't already filled by the trilogies themselves. So this might be a shorter discussion right here because we really don't have to talk too much about this. We just give an example basically. So I'm going to go ahead and let Dark Knight talk about it. But before I do, I'm just going to say that the when it comes to depending on outside content, the sequel trilogy unfortunately depends too much on outside content to for the movies to actually be the best they can be. One example, real quick, is the Last Jedi's novelization, where they add some stuff into the book that they didn't in the movie to make sense of certain things that happened in the movie. And I can't think of an example specifically of those things because I haven't read the novelization. I just remember reading about the novelization doing that. And you know what? I might read because I think I have it in here somewhere. I think I bought it when I actually tried to like the movie at first. But I have it, and I might read on it some, maybe those specific parts if I find it, and then use that as an example. But there are examples such as that book that, give credit to the argument that yes, the sequel trilogy depends too much on outside content to fill in the holes. So, Dark Knight, what's your thoughts on that?
All right. So I would mention one thing as like you were talking about outside information. The Rise of Skywalker. They left out a huge detail in the movie at the very beginning in the novelization that Palpatine was a clone. Because in the movie, they don't even at all mention that. I mean, sure you see the Snoke test tubes or whatever, but you don't know that Palpatine's a clone. Like the average moviegoer would not understand that at all.
Exactly.
And that was a whole nother outside source into it, and it's very convoluted with the sequel trilogy because it depends on it's a bag of bad apples. It has too much of old mixed with trying to start something new, but getting stuck in between with trying something new and just recycling old material and just trying to get it over with and just say they did it.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's kind of how I generally feel about that. I mean, it's the prequels. They kind of. I mean, Lucas had his own vision for that. That he made that very different than what the original trilogy was. The prequels was more political. They were more obviously you get to see the fall of the Jedi. You get to see the events of that. There's a huge difference, and there's not really. He's not really relying on outside sources for that because he's just creating his own story there with what that is, and it all works out. It's all leading up to what eventually becomes the Empire. Which I mean, sure, I guess you can say he relies on that he knows that that's where he's going to, but at the same time, it's all he's showing it in a new perspective, a new way. When it comes to the sequels, they just kept recycling old ideas. I mean, The Force Awakens, you might as well just call that a New Hope 2.0. I mean, that's all it was. I'm sorry. And The Last Jedi, that was the one that people wanted. Yeah. The Last Jedi was what everybody wanted. They wanted these new characters to do their own thing. Like, let's start exploring new stuff. However, they went way off the course than what we was wanting. The whole point of everybody was wanting The Last Jedi because it was going to be, it was going to be new, it was going to be fresh, it wasn't going to be recycled material. But in a way, it still recycled some stuff, but nowhere near as bad as The Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker did. But unfortunately, that would be the closest thing to new material you could get would be from The Last Jedi, but it was just new material in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And then you get The Rise of Skywalker, which at that point, I think they just gave up. They were just like, JJ, please just do something, make this, just end this nightmare that we're in. And yeah, that's kind of how I feel about all that.
Well, see, there's a difference between outside material and the trying to fill in the gaps that the story the creator himself has left open. And what I mean by that is the original trilogy mentions a lot about, or mentions a few things about the Clone Wars and about the past. And from those lines, that's where the prequel trilogy was born. He wanted to, George Lucas wanted to expand on that part of the story that he didn't in the original movies. So yes, he does have to keep in mind that yes, he has to get from this new point A that he's created all the way to point B, which has already been created. So he has to stay true to that story, but that's not really outside content, more of just trying to make a consistent story. Outside content would probably be more like books, or maybe like, let's say, a TV show. Now, don't get me wrong. Let's say The Mandalorian was more of trying to fill in the gaps of the sequel trilogy. That would be a bad way to do it. It's its own thing, but if they use The Mandalorian, the show, to fill in those gaps that that they should have already had in the movies, that would have been a bad idea. First of all, like a waste of a good show that could have been completely original, which it was original. I'm not saying anything about The Mandalorian, and it sure wasn't there just to fill in gaps. But if they had done something like that, or just put the story, like filled the holes within, let's say, a comic just a book in
Kept it
general,
fresh, made it feel like it was a part of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just completely just making all new stuff that was never seen before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if it filled in a hole, it might have been like a minor hole, not like a major plot hole that we've been getting in the sequel trilogy. But if it's like a minor little plot hole that didn't have to be explained within the movie to make the movie make sense, that's one thing. If it's a major plot hole, like let's say, how did Palpatine come back from the dead, and they don't mention that throughout the entirety of The Rise of Skywalker. All we know is that somehow Palpatine returned, as Poe Dameron said, and that's literally my thoughts. Somehow Palpatine returned, and
based on the movie, that's all you get. But
Yeah.
from the novelization, they expand on that. But it's like, why did you just not include like a 5-second, 10-second explanation in the movie of that?
Yeah, like why couldn't somebody, like let's say Kylo Ren started to ask questions? How did you return? How did you come back? And then Palpatine gives an explanation there. That right there would have worked. That right there would have filled in that hole. But that's not what we got. Instead,
they just shoehorned it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the difference between outside material or trying to fill in plot, like certain plot holes, like Palpatine's return. That one is a major plot hole. They really didn't tease it none throughout the sequel trilogy. And I mean, if that was the plan, they should have been making small teases to it. I mean, some could argue that the scene where Snoke and Rey are sort of playing around with the Force and being Force lightninged and all that junk, where it played Palpatine's theme, some would say that might be a reference or a tease to it being actually Palpatine. But honestly, that's not what I got when I watched that movie. I thought that they were just making another episode 6-ish type scene where Palpatine is taunting Luke, and trying to get him to give into his hate. So I feel like that's what they were really doing, and that's why they made the music choice they did, it wasn't to tease Palpatine's return. See, that's the difference, though. Like, if it was meant to be that way, it would have been more subtle than that, in my opinion. But you'd still be theorizing, oh, does this mean Palpatine's returning? I mean, nobody theorized that. Nobody did. Nobody cared who Snoke was because they never gave us a backstory on that either. But, like, all that stuff is important, but, they just leave it out. And, oh, guess what? We got comics for it, or we got books for it. You can learn all that stuff right here. But what if I don't like reading? Or what if I don't particularly care about comics? Like, what then? Well, I guess you don't know how this happened, so, oh well. And that is the problem. Now, I think we learn a lot about the Knights of Ren in a comic book series of some sort, if I'm not mistaken, but they're also going to mention Kylo Ren's turn and the Knights of Ren in the new Lego Halloween special thing that they're doing. So we're getting a visual look at, Kylo's turn or Ben Solo's turn to the dark side and his joining to the Knights of Ren. We didn't get that either in the movies, but here we are getting it in a Lego Halloween special, which we shouldn't be getting it in unless it was already shown once in the movies. I mean, if we have to wait for a Lego special to explain a plot hole in a major blockbuster movie like The Force Awakens or Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, then there's a problem with the writing because usually you don't watch the Lego specials to get added story. You usually watch them to get a comedic take on the current story that's on there, or maybe a new take in general on how this happened or that happened. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to outside content affecting the main story, or being told in the main story that wasn't told in the main story. You know what I mean? I don't know if I said that right. But I guess you know what I mean. So, you got anything else to say on that, Dark Knight?
Oh no, go ahead.
All right, Commander Tano. Outside content, or depending on outside content, to fill in plot holes. Go.
Got it. Mine is my response to this one is succinct. So every story has gaps. That's the nature of, and when you fill gaps, you end up creating more gaps. A story is it's like a, kind of like a rope bridge with little planks tied at different intervals for you to step across. And the issue isn't so much as whether a story has gaps, they all do, but whether there are enough planks on that bridge that can make it serviceable to get one from one end to the other. And so, yeah, do you find gaps in the in the original trilogy, in the prequel trilogy? Yeah, sure, but nothing that makes those story bridges unusable. You can understand each of those, trilogies as their own unit. You don't need any help from any outside materials. And that actually is an interesting thing with the prequel trilogy, because it's like, even though it is a prequel, it is kind of a derivative work of the original, you can understand that one on its own too if you wanted to. Obviously, you enjoy it more if you are familiar with the original trilogy, but it's not even necessary for that. And whereas the sequel trilogy, and I think kind of the representative image scene for those movies is the light speed skipping, because that's a lot of what happened there. Especially in the Rise of Skywalker, but also in the other movies where we were bombarded with MacGuffins and bits and pieces of information that it would have been nice to have some of that content that was locked away in those books or comics or other forms of media to actually have been fit into the main movies.
Yep, I agree. And as like as far as the MacGuffins go, like that's just bad writing. If you have to have a MacGuffin to explain why this happens or that happens, or to give them an easy way out, I mean, that right there is just bad writing. It's too coincidental, as you said.
Yeah, and it's like, look, if you're going to have a MacGuffin, fine, that there are great stories that have MacGuffins, but it's when you have so many of them, it's like, oh, you need this wayfinder, it's like you've got to find this series of, there are like these two wayfinders, but you need the dagger to find the wayfinder, but you need to have the dagger to kind of hold it in a certain way next to the old Death Star to find the wayfinder. It's like, yeah, and people have said plenty about the silliness of making a dagger to fit the shape of the Death Star wreckage, and not seeming to account for the fact, environmental factors like erosion, that might change the shape of the wreckage decades later.
Not to mention that maybe some of it's knocked out of place by waves and stuff like that at some point.
Yeah, little details like that. You would think that someone is, given that they have a whole story group apparently to check up on these things, that someone would have pointed that out, but no.
Yep. No, apparently not. What about you, Chrono? What you got on this? Chrono? Okay. I do not hear any Chrono in here. Where's the Chrono?
I've been having some issues with my connection, so maybe he's run into some of that.
Ooh. Well, Chrono, if you hear me, I don't hear you.
Sorry, it was having some technical issues.
Okay.
But that's okay. Would you mind repeating the question?
Okay, so we were talking about how the sequel trilogy depends too much on outside content to fill in their plot holes, and we also sort of talked about MacGuffin. So what are your thoughts on all that stuff?
Yeah. No, I'm on. Yeah, I agree. They even released some comic books prior to The Force Awakens that told the story of Poe's mom, and that included Luke, and the story on how Tripio got his red arm. And it's like, why do you have to tell us all these things before the movie is even out?
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to expand. I mean, the EU is clear proof that we as fans like it when they expand on stuff we were shown in the movies. But it's very different to expand on a certain topic and to just make the movie dependent on that material.
Yeah.
Because when you do, you're forcing the audience to go down a path that's not natural for each other. I mean, I'm pretty sure all of us here are more than happy to dive into a bunch of comic books, novels, games, or whatever.
Oh,
but not everyone is. And as it doesn't matter if it's Star Wars or whatever other franchise, if you rely on outside media to fill in the gaps, then that means you failed at storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you mentioned about 3PO's red arm, I mean that itself is a small detail. That's not something that has to be told in the movie, but it would have been nice if they said something about it. I mean, they just mentioned that he has a red arm, and that's it. And you're thinking, why? Why does he have a red arm? They could have went in and talked about that a little bit. They could have made a vague mentioning of it, give a vague explanation as to why. but instead they depend on outside media to tell that story. I think even I don't know if it was the Lego Star Wars Force Awakens game that did it, but I thought there was a Lego mission. Now I didn't finish the whole game. I wasn't the biggest fan of that game, to be honest.
Oh
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm more.
I think there is that mission that you talk about. I think there is.
Yeah. Well, they also tried to. Well, you know what? Now that I'm mentioning Lego Star Wars: The Force Awakens, let me just say that we find out what happened to Han's crew in that mission, or in that game. They tell a lot of stories within that game that aren't in the movie, trying to give us a little extra story. Now, nothing wrong with that. But if that turned out to be something more major, like Palpatine's return, then like let's say the new Lego Star Wars that's coming out, the Skywalker Saga one, if it gives us a on-screen explanation to how Palpatine returned, then the game is trying to fill in the holes that the movie didn't. And I'm sure that there will be some of that in the game, I guess, to make the game more enjoyable and more, I guess, coherent. But that it's major plot points like that. That's what really set it off for us. We're not so happy if we have to get something outside the movies to understand the movies. Now, the red arm thing doesn't affect the movie so much. It just gets you wondering why he has a red arm. Now, it'd be nice to mention it, but he doesn't. And which is fine, because you don't have to know that to understand that the First Order's there to blow up the New Republic and then go after Luke Skywalker. But there's also one other major plot point that I don't ever recall them expanding on. Now, they probably did on some sort of book or comic, but why R2 was shut off for like so long and then decided that he wanted to turn on right at the very moment that he needed to. Now, that's a plot point right there that we didn't get an explanation to in the movies. Like, so R2's been shut off all this time, and like, oh, well, he's back. How did he turn on? Nobody knows. He just did it of his own free will. Usually a device that's turned off, like fully shut down, can't really turn itself back on. So that's, but then again, this is Star Wars, and I'm maybe putting too much reality into it. Like, if I shut my phone completely down, it wouldn't turn on because I have a call or something like that, But this is Star Wars, so maybe their technology's different. Too much logic here. Maybe I'm trying to put too much logic in all this. Maybe I should just throw it out the window,
Yeah,
You
pretty
should.
much.
But yeah, that's all I got to say on that. You got more to say, Chrono?
Too much questions. Consume next product.
Too many questions. But you got anything else to say about this, or should we move on?
No, I think it's just what I said is enough.
Okay. Now, this one might be short. And I think that even we can give the sequel trilogy a point for this. And you might not understand it at first. Then again, you might. I don't know. But the next one is good characters. Now, the reason why I say the sequel trilogy might actually get a point for this one is that we legitimately enjoyed the characters. What they did with them, we didn't. But we enjoyed the characters from episode 7. We enjoyed them. We wanted to see more of them. What we got with them later, we didn't so much enjoy. But the fact that we wanted to see more of those characters in the first movie, the fact that we feel like those characters got an undeserving end, or they deserve better, as we say for Finn, means that the character was a good character that they just decided to take in a different direction than what we should have. So I'm thinking that the sequel trilogy started off with good characters, but they failed to use them correctly in the later movies. That's all I can say about that. Now, I know that the original trilogy and prequel trilogy have already won a point for this one because, we're getting a whole show just on Obi-Wan. and he is such a good. Now he came from the original trilogy, but we're getting the Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan, and we're only getting Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan because of what the prequels did with Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan. So that automatically makes the prequel trilogy Obi-Wan a good character, not just because he was in the originals. But, we also have Qui-Gon, who, like I was talking about earlier, has a deeper connection with the lore and has given us a lot more to the story than, let's say, Poe or Finn in 3 movies.
But they fly now.
Dang it, you're making me play it.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now!
Yeah, that.
See, that's a point right there for the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to give them a point just for that. I mean, I don't want to go back to character development, but I do want to say that they did try to develop Poe's character in the final movie, and I think they did really good with it. Poe is one of my favorite characters in the entire trilogy. I think the last movie did Poe a lot more justice than the Last Jedi. They regressed some of the characters in the Last Jedi, and then tried to bring them back up in the Rise of Skywalker. But that's all I'm going to say when it comes to that, because I forgot to mention that earlier. But Poe was a good character. I really love his interactions with Finn in the first movie. I mean, their interactions are more or less the same throughout the trilogy, except for the last movie where they are sort of at each other's throats, and I hate that because they had such good chemistry before, and then in this movie, Finn is just all out annoyed with him, and I mean, there's a few good moments, like when Poe is revealed to have been a spice runner, and then Finn goes, Poe the spice runner of spice, or something like that. That joke, it actually made me laugh. I was like, oh, that's funny. I like that. Because that reminds me of like my interactions with, some of my friends, like either ones I work with or you guys on here. I would make that kind of joke because I'm weird like that. But, I relate with that joke. I loved it. I thought it was funny. But it's little interactions like that made me love their chemistry together. And when they had Finn and Poe like sort of at each other's throats throughout the movie, I was like, I don't feel like this works. I mean, the characters themselves were good, the direction wasn't. And like Commander Tano earlier said, that some characters would be were good, but they were in the wrong position. Like we can say Holdo, she would have worked as a villain, like Commander Tano says. And see, that's the thing. Like the characters themselves, they could work. They're just put in the wrong place, or they've been
actually with Holdo. It's very interesting what she said about Holdo, because the whole thing with her and Poe in the second movie could have been easily fixed if they didn't make it about her trying to teach him a lesson. If she was instead this bureaucratic, stubborn general trying to do things a certain way, and him trying to lead them out of it, proving that she was wrong, both characters would have been greater instead of what we got.
Yep. Exactly. But
because he would have been a good antagonist, and he would have been a good rebel, like he was supposed to be, trying to lead his people into a different solution that maybe doesn't end up with everyone dead. I mean, his heart was in the right place. They just played like he wasn't seeing the whole picture, which is stupid, because they were in a no-win scenario.
Yeah, there was no win to that. Like, if you let their big dreadnought stay around, like, it's just going to cause just as much carnage as if it wasn't, as if they, or well, I'm trying to say it right. Okay, if it's going to cause them just as much trouble now as it will later. They may have been in a bad position, yes, but honestly, they were never in a good position in the first place. So, like, what was so wrong with him trying to take out a dreadnought? Look, if you're outnumbered and you know that you may probably lose this battle, you at least want to take a few enemies with you, and taking out a dreadnought is no small feat, especially since Poe, for the most part, was doing most of it himself. Those bombers weren't doing much. Actually, they all failed except for one of them. So, I mean,
And they even made fun of him, like, oh yeah, that's the typical way of you pilots. You always want to shoot your way out of things. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point of having people like him around.
yeah, exactly. They're the ones that want action, and you know what? It's not bad to have those people around because you can get inspiration from those people. You can think, well, this guy might have a point about how to take care of this and that. And then there might be this diplomatic person that has their ideas, and maybe you just want to combine their ideas and use it. You know, you don't need just one perspective, because if you have only one perspective, you're not going to get the full picture. You know what I mean? You
Yeah. And it also doesn't make any sense because they paint Holdo like she's this super wise general in the rebellion. And we are like, if you are so knowledgeable about everything, how did you end up in this situation?
Yeah, exactly. I had something to say and then I lost it. Dang it. No, I can't think of it now. Dang it. I had something good and then it just left me. Well, you got anything else to say about that, or
No, I think that's pretty much it.
All right. So I think I already said my piece on it anyways. So I did go through everybody on here, right? I didn't skip anybody because for some reason I feel like I skipped somebody.
Actually, I think you were the only one talking, and then I interrupted you.
Oh, did I? Oh, wait, was I? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore.
I've lost track, so
I got lost in the
I
discussion.
think we, yeah, I think we all have.
Oh yeah. No, I was the one talking, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were.
Oh. Okay. That's right. All right. I'm glad I'm back to where I was. Okay, my mind's coming back to me. So, good characters. Back to that. Yes, I think all the trilogies had good characters. I mean, all of them also had their bad characters. If you want to say like a certain character in the prequel trilogy, Jar Jar, was a bad character, then I mean, I guess you'd be right. I mean, it just depends on your opinion of that character. Universally, he was hated, but over time, for me, I grew to love him. Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, they've done some extra stuff with him, but if you want to just look at the movie perspective, like, is he a good character in the movies? Probably not the best character in the movies. One that we could have maybe done without. But if you want to add in the stuff that they did with him in, let's say, the Clone Wars, or maybe there's some outside media besides, like something visual, it might be more of a comic, or it might be a book or something like that. Maybe that has also added to his character and made you like him more. I don't know. But what they did with him in the Clone Wars, I started to like a lot. They made him a lot better of a character in the Clone Wars than they did in the movies. But since we're looking at the movies alone, his character wasn't that great. He was too clumsy. I know what they were going with, but I think it was executed poorly. So, I mean, every trilogy has their bad characters. And as far as bad characters in the original trilogy, I'm trying to think of one. I guess that's a good thing that I'm actually having to try. But well, do you guys think there's any bad characters in the original? I don't really. I know I said every trilogy has their bad characters, but that one I'm having a hard time thinking of. there wasn't one character that I outright disliked. Let me put it that way. What about you guys? You got any ideas on who would be that character for the original trilogy?
I can't think of any.
Huh. Well,
No.
I did say every trilogy has their bad characters, but apparently not the original trilogy. I guess it's exempt for that one. No, all their characters were pretty good, actually, now that I think about it. So, really, it only applies to the sequel and prequel trilogy at this point. So, of course, the prequel trilogy had Jar Jar as the best example. What would the sequel trilogies be? I would probably say, I want to say, what was his name? Hux. And it's not because he was exactly a bad character, but because of how they did his character. I feel like he got
It was
a
hilarious.
yes, yes. He was the comedic relief, but at his expense. Jar Jar was just dumb.
He wasn't
and
originally supposed to be comedic relief. He was extremely serious in the first movie.
Yeah, I liked what they did with him in the first movie, but then in the last two movies, they just used him as a punching bag.
They just made him a joke.
Yeah. So Hux would probably be that character for me. And it's sad because I loved his character in the first movie. But the last two movies, they just, downgraded his character to nothing but a punching bag. So with all that said, Dark Knight, what do you think about the good characters of these trilogies?
I mean, I was in all trilogies.
Yes, all of them. You can talk about whichever one you want to first. It don't matter.
Universally, my favorite character has to be Obi-Wan in general. I'm a huge Obi-Wan fan. If I had to have a ranking system, it's probably, I'll do it like this. I'm going to rank them. So it would be Obi-Wan, then it would probably be Yoda. And I'm a huge fan of, believe it or not, I'm a huge fan of Boba Fett. I like the bounty hunters
Mm-hmm.
and the guild itself, and that's one of the reasons why I like the Mandalorian so much. Is it explores the more of that side of the story, and
Oh, yeah.
and then Luke, obviously he's up there, but there are some bad. I mean, I was never a big fan of some of the mainly sequel characters. Jar Jar didn't bother me. I mean, Jar Jar kind of was, it kind of got overused, but I was okay with them in general. But I'd say my most negative characters come from the sequel trilogy because they just so many people. They were great. There was fantastic talent. It's just they misused their characters, poor judgment, and also it's just I just think they just kept constantly changing the narrative and the story. It just didn't help it none either in that regard. But to me, the Han, Luke, they're great. But my top three has to be Obi-Wan, Luke, Boba Fett, all of them.
So who would you say were the bad characters of those trilogies? I know that you mentioned Jar Jar, and that's what I would I don't consider Jar Jar a bad character. I think what they did with him was just tried to use him as comedic relief, and it didn't work out as well. But if you wanted to classify a bad character for each trilogy, Jar Jar would probably have to be one of them because I really can't think of another one that would fit that, unfortunately. And then I said Hux for the sequel trilogy. So what do you say on those trilogies?
For the original trilogy, I don't really think I had a bad character. It was I was in general I agreed with it. Now with the prequels, I mean Jar Jar was he was annoying, but they clearly got the idea quickly on, and when it's the sequel trilogy, I was just Rose unfortunately didn't stick with me. I mean it just She felt
Oh,
like
yeah, I forgot
it
about
was
Rose.
just unnecessary. There was no real. I mean, not to be mean to the actor, it's just the character was not necessary at all for that entire trilogy.
Nope. The only real function she served was to have that weird necklace thing that she had that got them into the room that they needed to be in
I would
that
have
they got
liked to see
captured in.
more of the Rose that we got at the beginning of The Last Jedi, like the mechanic, the engineer, and
Yeah.
the sister story versus whatever we got out of whatever that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah.
I forgot about Rose. That's sort of, I guess that might sort of say something about her character, but I was trying to think of what, I was trying to think of what would be the worst character in the sequel trilogy, and the first thing that came to my mind was Hux because of how they misused his character. But now that you mention Rose, all I can think of is this whole scene that I'm going to play, and then I'm going to change my answer to Rose Tico because I mean, Hux will be a close second, but this scene right here in particular just ruins Rose's character like entirely for me.
Big, it's too late. Don't do this.
No! I won't let them win!
No! Big, get to the ball. We have to retreat.
I saved you. Tell me. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
That ending gets me every time. Yeah, dumb things like that, and the fact that they didn't shoot her out of the air like they did everybody else. The closer they got to the cannon, before she did a death run into Poe and left Poe unscathed, but her near death. I don't know how that works out. Like none of that makes sense. But yeah, you know that whole scene really ruins her character even more for me than any character in the entire trilogy. Now that I say it, so I've changed my answer to Rose, and I completely agree with everything you just said, Dark Knight.
Yep.
Yep. You got anything else to say on that, or shall I move on?
Probably not. I mean, I generally love all the characters. It's just there's just a tad few that I have nitpicks about.
Alrighty. Well, Commander Tano, what would your picks for good characters, bad characters, whatever? Just give me an explanation.
Good characters, bad characters, whatever, plus explanation. Oh.
I don't ask much, do I?
That sounds like
I'm trying
homework.
to.
Oh,
You know, it
Lord.
was funny whenever I would whenever you get those, like, say, I get these workbooks with math problems. I would say and you'd have to do the math problem, and then there'd be little things, show your work, or how do you know, and I would answer like, say, 2 + 2 =, and I put 4. And show your work, I would say 2 + 2 = 4. You know, I would just repeat or just because it's so. And that wasn't very helpful. But I feel like my answers to this will probably be that level of just kind of self-evidence. I feel, and also that would be kind of a repeat. You know, obviously
Yeah.
bad characters. You know, Rose, for everything that's been mentioned. I'm trying to think of like maybe a surprising one that I would go with. Ooh. I've talked about Haldo. I like what you mentioned about Hux, because that was just kind of confusing, honestly, like the arc that they sent him through. And it's like, if you're going to have him be a comedic character, then just establish that, you know, just just make sure that that's a very, very apparent from the beginning.
Mhm.
Not I'm trying to think of of some others. I mean, yeah, it's just you either had just in the sequel trilogy you just either had some of these characters that were just cast in the wrong roles, as I said, or just the other thing generally is there was such a, especially once by the time you get to the Rise of Skywalker, there's such a glut of characters at that point of underdeveloped characters. It's like I can't even remember necessarily some of them to kind of assess their relative badness or goodness.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a better question would be: do you consider some of the characters, like the ones I mentioned, Poe, Finn, Ray, or any of them? Do you consider any of them good characters that's just been misused, or what do you
Yes.
think about that?
Yeah, I think Poe, Finn, and Ray, all three of them were misused in different ways. Ray, for the reasons we've mentioned, I think just letting her, not necessarily letting her kill Chewie, but just letting her kill someone accidentally, that would have made a big difference. That's the thing. If you're going to make Ray a very, be kind of that natural, if you're going to go with what they did, like the extremely naturally gifted route with her, then with that kind of character, you can still have that character have flaws and weaknesses. They're just different. And that would entail something like that character accidentally harming someone that they care about when they hadn't intended to. And so they were teasing that with what they did with Chewie and all that, but then they were like, oh, just kidding, no consequences. And Poe, and it was clear they were kind of trying to set him up as you said, as kind of the next Han Solo. And it's frustrating because what I would have loved with The Last Jedi is to have him actually like win against Holdo. Like you know what I mean? Like win against the kind of the corrupt admiral and take over and kind of write the course, and actually have a good plan, but they didn't do that. I would have liked, it's like, why couldn't they in that film let Finn do what he wants to do? Why couldn't they let Finn go and be with Rey? Why not? I don't understand that. It's like they seem to almost, it's like in Force Awakens, they're seeming to kind of put him in that archetypal hero's position, but then they don't do that. They can't seem to commit to anything with any of the characters.
I agree with that entirely. One thing that just came to my head, when it comes to The Last Jedi, they overused. Holdo sort of went on this, like, using nothing but apparently Leia quotes throughout the whole movie. She would say that Leia would say this or Leia would say that. She never seemed to say anything for herself, except when she wanted to demean somebody. But they overused the one line, like, "We are the spark that will light the fire that will either burn down the whole First Order," or how they reworded it a couple times, but like, "We are the spark that will do this," or "We are the spark that will do that." So, I mean, that's just one thing that really bugged me in that movie. I know it doesn't have anything to do with exactly character, but I feel like that sort of messed with Holdo's character a little bit, that she was always quoting Leia quotes, apparently. I mean, she didn't say those quotes, and they sound too cheesy to be Leia quotes, in my opinion. But I I feel like she was trying too hard to be more like Leia than herself. This is almost an analysis of Holdo. I don't know what you guys say about that, but she was trying to be she was a Leia wannabe, and I guess claimed that Leia had taught her all this stuff. I don't know, but she wasn't. She was a character that wasn't trying to be herself. She was trying to be, I guess, Leia. So that, in my opinion, wouldn't work for her character. It didn't work for her character. I feel like the corrupt politician role would have suited her much better. And not to mention that, like I was saying earlier, there's only black and white. There is no in between. There's no gray area that they talk about. That could have gave a lot more credence to the gray area stuff that they mentioned later on in the movie as well. Or earlier on in the movie when they were coming back from Canto Bight with the criminal dude, the code breaker man, whatever he was. I mean, that would have actually been really, that would have been a really good thing to tie into that there's people that work for the bad and the good. And then if she had been that corrupt politician that works for the good side but is corrupt and does things her way, that would have gave a lot more credence to the gray area stuff that they had mentioned. I know I'm sort of rewording what I said earlier, but I feel like I'm saying it better this time. So, I mean, that would have worked better for her character, in my opinion. I mean, there's so many things they could have improved on with their characters, and that is, for sure would have been one of them with Holdo. That, and she should stop trying to come up with these somewhat inspiring quotes that apparently Leia had said at some point or other. You got anything else to say on that, Commander Tano, before I move on to Chrono?
Nope, and you made that point very well.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. All right, Chrono, what do you got?
Oh, I guess if I were to say who is the bad character or the worst character in the sequel trilogy, it would probably be DJ, the Codebreaker, because he really came out of nowhere, and he does one thing to advance the plot, and there's no depth to him. We don't really care about him. And the whole point about going to get him to do this one thing nobody else could do, that really makes no sense.
Yeah, and
so, yeah, I would say he's a bad character because you don't really need it. I mean, and in that way, I would also say a bad character is Maz Kanata, because her existence predicates on the fact that she has the lightsaber stuck in a basement of her castle. I mean, what else is she good for? I mean,
well, not to mention that she could have gave that to Leia at any point.
Yeah.
I mean, she knows Leia, apparently. She's telling Han to go home to Leia. And so they must have some sort of relationship. I mean, Han and Maz Kanata have a relationship that must span for a few years. I mean, no, it does span for a few years. In the Star Wars Battlefront campaign, you get to see a little bit of that, of his earlier life after Episode 6. And he meets Maz Kanata, or I don't know if it's like first time meeting. I can't remember. I haven't played the game in a while, but he's known her for a while, since before his hair turned white. So that's been quite a few years. So they do hint a little bit at that relationship. So why in the world did, if she had that lightsaber for a while, now it depends on how long she's had it, but I think there's probably some sort of outside media that also gives us an idea of how long she's had it. Why didn't she just give that to Leia? I mean,
yeah, it makes no sense.
No, it don't. They should have, instead of saying that this it's a story for another time. They should have explained when the how she found the lightsaber or who gave it to her or something like that. I don't know. Anyway,
I mean, if you change that and you make it like, okay, Rey somehow came into the possession of a random lightsaber she found somewhere. If you do that, the whole point of Maz Kanata existing goes away. I mean, you don't need her for anything.
Yep, exactly. She was only there to be there for, or she was only there to, I guess, be a reason for them to come to this planet to find the lightsaber.
Yeah.
If it weren't for the lightsaber being there, really going there and talking to Maz Kanata wouldn't have been a necessary thing to add.
Yeah, no, that's why I say she's a bad character. Because, I mean, you don't need the character. Provides like one very small thing to the whole movie plot. So no, there's no point in having that character around. And after she does that, she does nothing else.
No, she gets into some sort of dispute in the next movie and does absolutely nothing except tell you about a code breaker dude that has a weird pendant thing.
Yeah, and the fact that she does point them into that direction is again, she's used to forward the plot. It's not like she's really doing something. She's just like, oh yeah, I conveniently know about this guy you actually need right now.
See, that's the thing. Like, not to mention that the whole Codebreaker quest, side quest, I guess you could say, was literally nothing but a waste of time because it ended in them not finding the right person. Not to mention that they wasted a lot of time being at Canto Bight, and you know they're on a time limit for however much fuel they have left. So when they finally get back and they're like, oh, we're going to jump onto the Supremacy thing, and I think it's called the Supremacy or whatever. It's Snoke's big, super, super duper wide Star Destroyer thingy. So they jump onto that thing, and they try to disable the Lightspeed tracker thing they've created, and they get captured.
Yeah.
So that whole adventure was pointless because of its conclusion. Like, it didn't forward the plot at all. It was literally just a side quest from the main story. It's like playing Skyrim.
The whole thing with Canto Bight and this guy feels like they were sitting in the room planning the movie, and it was like, how do we fill up like this amount of time in the movie? And they were like, oh, okay, let's do this side quest.
So who was it that mentioned? It might have been Sir AOA, but who was it that mentioned that they? I'm pretty sure one of you guys did. Anyways, mentioned that they tried too hard to make the movie longer than all the rest of them. I think that was Commander Tano actually that said that, because she started mentioning stuff about the lengths of these movies. Was that you that brought up that point?
Yeah. It was like some weeks ago, but yeah, it rings a bell.
So I think, as an answer to what you were saying, Chrono, that the reason why they were sitting in there planning, trying to figure out what they'll put in there, they were thinking mainly about how to make the movie the longest Star Wars movie, rather than actually give it a good reason to be there. That's what
the worst part is that, yeah, okay, let's say you need to make this movie the longest possible. There are tons of things you could have done other than Canto Bight. Canto Bight, it's like mediocrity at its finest. It does nothing for the movie. No one likes that part of the. I mean, even if you like the movie, I'm pretty sure most people don't like that specific part of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So, got anything else to say about this, or should we move on?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, the point was about the good and bad characters, and I think the sequel trilogy has potentially the worst characters, mostly not because they are extremely bad, but because they really go nowhere. Some of them are pretty pointless.
So they go to Jakku, which is pretty
They
much
go to
nothing.
yeah.
Okay, so we got two more things to cover, and we might be able to cover them before the 3 hour mark, which is what I'm trying to get to. And I think we'll end the stream after we finish these two things, because we'll probably have to make a part 3 for this. How wonderful. I mean, we got like, what did the trilogies do right? What did they do wrong? And then we have a George Lucas versus Disney debate. And I'll explain the George Lucas versus Disney thing later. But we also
Is there
we
even
have
a debate?
well, no, but apparently some people think there is. So we're going to pretend that we have a debate here and explain why George Lucas is better than Disney. Anyways, so we got two more things to talk about, and I think we can probably talk about them both at the same time. One of them's entertainment value, and one of them's nostalgia versus fan service. And I think they sort of go hand in hand. See, the thing is, the original trilogy was very entertaining. It especially since the first movie was made to be a one-off movie. They didn't really plan on having any other movies because they didn't know that it would end up being as big as it was. They didn't think it would hit it that big. In other words, but everybody seemed to love it so much that they're like, okay, we'll make another one. The movies got even better. The Star Wars Episode 5 is by far probably the one movie that everybody generally says is the best one in the entire saga. And I can't disagree. It is such a good movie. I really love the movie. And plus you have that big reveal of Darth Vader being Luke's father. So very entertaining movie. I did watch the original trilogy recently, which is why I watched Star Wars Episode 6 like about a week ago, because I was watching the entire trilogy and I wanted to watch them, just because I've not watched them in a while. So I went and watched all 3 of the movies, and I just really, really enjoyed the whole experience, just like I did before. Now, I think what hindered my experience before is knowing that what happens in the sequel trilogy happens, and that started to hinder my experience. And then I cut myself off from the sequel trilogy and started thinking like, no, that doesn't happen afterwards. So then I started enjoying the new trilogy or the original trilogy much better, like I did before the Disney trilogy ever came out. So what I'm trying to say is the entertainment value, in my opinion, is like the original trilogy has that down. There is no contest at all. Prequel trilogy, I personally enjoyed it, but there are some moments like, whenever Jar Jar was around on Episode 1 that can sometimes get a little annoying. Don't get me wrong. I love Jar Jar now. I actually started off liking Jar Jar. I think I've mentioned this before. I started off liking Jar Jar, and I think I let myself be influenced by everybody else saying they didn't like it, and I started seeing the things that they didn't like about it, and it started getting to me. I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't as funny as I used to think it was. Finally, I started thinking for myself and thought, okay, I'm going to let myself enjoy these the way I want to. And I started liking Jar Jar again. It makes me feel nostalgic, and we'll get to the nostalgia thing in just a minute. But I started getting nostalgic about it. Anytime I see Star Wars Episode 1, I don't cringe out like I used to, because I've let myself enjoy the movies the way they are. But there's a difference between that and the sequel trilogy. You have to force yourself to enjoy those. I can't let myself enjoy those. I can let myself enjoy the first one. The second one, not so much. The third one, maybe. But still, like, not enough for me to go back and watch them like I do the prequels and original trilogy. So the prequel trilogy, it had its moments, of course. But they were still, especially the third one, they were all very entertaining. The action sequences were amazing. The fight scenes between, like, let's say, Anakin and Count Dooku, Anakin and Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Maul, like all that was so well done, in my opinion. And not to mention that, like, in the first movie, the practical effects looked really good. They had experimented with CGI, and some of the CGI didn't look the greatest, but it was an experimental stage at that point. So of course it wasn't going to look like, what it is now. So you also have to take into account that it is an older movie for that kind of stuff. But the movies themselves are just, in my opinion, entertaining. I think the least entertaining one would probably be episode 2, because there's too many scenes of, I guess, trying to set up the romance between Anakin and Padme that sort of fall short. The one that comes to my mind, and believe it or not, it's not the I hate sand part that really gets me. It's the part where they're at the table just talking, and then the scene right afterward where they're like in this room, dark room with a fireplace, and like that whole sequence right there ruins some of the movie for me. Like, I don't personally watch the movies for that. So I can say that that's something I don't enjoy as much in those movies, but overall the movies themselves aren't like unenjoyable. They have their moments. Mainly episode 1 and 3, but they have their moments. The best part of episode 2 is literally like the end, with the Jedi battle on Geonosis. That's just my opinion. They have good moments, like Obi-Wan versus Jango Fett. I love that fight. That's fun. Anything on Kamino was really cool. I love the music. I love the way the place looked. I just love that whole thing. But besides that, I can't really say like a whole lot about episode 2, because I mean, it, in my opinion, was probably the weakest of the prequel trilogy. But the original trilogy was solid through and through. The prequel trilogy was mostly solid. I'm going to give them a point just because of that. So right now, the original trilogy and prequel trilogy are at a 10, in my opinion. But I'll let you guys say what you want to say about it, and then maybe that might change my mind. I don't know. But the sequel trilogy relied too much on nostalgia, but came off as fan service. And that's where I was getting to with the nostalgia / fan service debate there as well. And you guys can expand on this later when I get to you. But the original the original trilogy didn't focus on nostalgia because, first of all, that's the original trilogy. You don't have to focus on the nostalgia factor because that's what's creating the nostalgia at this point. The prequel trilogy focused more on nostalgia rather than fan service. Like you get like the sense of nostalgia from, let's say, certain sound effects, certain music, like in Star Wars Episode 3. Some of the music from Star Wars Episode 5 starts to play during the Battle of the Heroes part, where Anakin and Obi-Wan are against each other, and Yoda and Palpatine are against each other. Some of the music from the ending fight on Episode 5 was in there, and you start seeing that or hearing that, and like you get these really good vibes from it. You're thinking, "Oh my gosh, this feels like Star Wars," That's nostalgia. The sound effects can also create a sense of nostalgia, but the sequel trilogy focused mainly on fan service rather than nostalgia. They tried to give us little references, like, let's say, the little remote from Episode 4 that Luke was training against with his lightsaber. They show that briefly. They have the Millennium Falcon in there. They have Han and Chewie doing what they used to do. So it's more trying to cater to what they think people wanted to see with certain characters at that point. It was more of a fan servicing though than nostalgia. You're thinking that Han Solo was probably the most nostalgic thing in the whole thing because he wasn't that much of a different character than what he was in the last movie. Star Wars Episode 6. But That's really the only nostalgia I was getting out of it. The music, it was good, but like the music didn't really like especially during the fight between Kylo and Rey, like none of it gave me like this nostalgic vibe. Um, Not to mention that like seeing like a new version of the Empire um didn't really fill me with nostalgia. Nostalgia. It just gave me questions like, how did this happen? So I mean, they're just. I think they tried too much to fan service rather than create nostalgia. So now there was one moment that got me very nostalgic, and it was actually, believe it or not, in the Rise of Skywalker when Poe and what was her name? I guess his girlfriend. I forgot her name though. I've not watched the movie in a while. Well, they were talking, and music is a certain track started to play, and it was a really good track. I can't remember what the name of the track was, but it came from the prequel trilogy. That was the only track that you got that came from the prequel trilogy in that entire movie, and it was very short lived, unfortunately. So when that happened, I started getting all nostalgic because that music was so good, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this feels like a Star Wars movie at this point because the music fit the moment, like the mood of the scene, and it just fit in my opinion. So I was like, oh my gosh, I love this part, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. The discussion between Poe and that lady character. I can't ever remember her name for some reason. But yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and hand off the discussion to you guys because I think I've made my point. But I guess we can discuss both entertainment value and the nostalgia versus fan service at the same time and try to get both of those out of the way. So go ahead, Dark Knight. Give me your thoughts on that.
On nostalgia and like
And entertainment value, like nostalgia versus fan service, all that,
well, obviously they were trying to do both in the Disney trilogy. Disney relied a lot on nostalgia, especially in The Force Awakens. That had nostalgia written all over it.
Yep.
And it's just in the entertainment industry that it's a business. At the end of the day, you got to look at it. Star Wars at first, it was George Lucas's project. It was his story. He wanted to tell his story of his world that he wanted to create. It's expanded dramatically to the point now where, I mean, there's theme parks on it, there's toys, merchandise left and right. And I mean, unfortunately, it's become a business. It's more about money now than it is fans. I mean, they do say they do fan service, and of course, I think they realized they went too far with what they were trying to do. But I don't know. To me, Disney just like Marvel, they've capitalized the market on the superhero movies, and same goes for Star Wars. They're trying to build that brand back up to what it once was. It's getting there, but there's a lot of damage control happening at the moment just because of the feedback. But right now, it's in my eyes, they focus a lot. They did focus on nostalgia, but in The Mandalorian, for example, they found the balance. I think they found balance to where you can have nostalgia, but also keep it fresh. And to that extent, I think we're going to see more of that. And honestly, for me, I think Disney Plus is helping the Lucasfilm brand more than the actual movies are at the moment. I think they understand. You can actually tell a expanded long. The Mandalorian is basically a 6-hour long movie, each season, of course. And because of that, you're able to have more time with your characters, more time with the story. You can do more, you can explore more, and you have time to incorporate things. And so now it's beyond what it originally was meant to be. It was meant to be a story of it was a fantasy story. It was just bring you to a whole new world. and Lucas created it, and I mean, sure, he was in on it too after it got so popularized. The merchandise, everything. It's a massive business money racket. But at the end of the day, we still enjoy it, and that's what it's all about. But at the same time, I like to look at quality over quantity. And I hope that's what they
Exactly.
see. I hope that's what they're going to see going forward with these projects because they're still in it for the money, obviously. I mean, if I was looking at it in a business standpoint, of course, that's me. I want to make more money. But at the same time, you have a base, you have a fan base. Just care about that because that's who's spending that money. So it's your fans. That's what it's all about. And to that extent, that's how I feel about the entire industry right now.
Well, I can completely agree with all that because, I mean, yeah, it is a business at the end of the day. I mean, if people think that they can just make certain changes overnight, that's not possible. I mean, some changes are made from a business standpoint, and of course, you can't help that. Whether they're good or not, I mean, that's one thing. Once you make that decision, it it's not like there's no going back, but I mean, honestly, that's how it feels at this point, and it doesn't seem like they will go back. So it is a business, but the thing is, though, like I don't feel like they're running the business as well as they should be because if if you've been to like let's say the Walmart down here, if you've been here, every single time I've passed through, and trust me, I've passed through it a lot, maybe to find something for my niece or something like that. But I've passed through the toy section a lot, and every single time, the Star Wars section, the only thing they have is the Baby Yoda plush thing that they sell up there for like $30 some.
Yeah.
Um, that's literally the only thing they have is just a whole shelf full of those. All the pegs that are on the wall there, or on the shelf wall thing, whatever. They're completely empty. They have no Star Wars figures from either the Black Series or even the cheaper ones for little kids. They don't have anything. They don't even have like these collectible type sets or whatever that they used to have that have, let's say, like a scout trooper on a speeder bike type of thing, like a 6-inch figure, not the small ones. Like they would have these bigger sets that had like the 6-inch figures on a vehicle or something made to fit that 6-inch figure. More of a display type of thing, but you can, like for those that would play with those like that you could do that. But the thing is, they've not been selling those. They've not had any figures that I've been able to see. The only thing they seem to have is the Lego Star Wars stuff, and there's not really that much of that either. So when it comes to merchandising, they're doing a terrible job because and Walmart isn't the only place, but there are a lot of other places that are like that. I usually, if I see it super empty, I take a picture of it and send it to a friend of mine or whatever that cares about that kind of stuff. I just send it to somebody. I might even put it in the Discord, which, real quick, I forgot to mention this earlier, but we have a Discord. If you want to join it, you can join it. There's links in the description to everything you can join. We even have a new Twitch channel for streaming our games and stuff like that, which is going to be fun. We just streamed the Old Republic Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. And we had somebody that was watching the stream. They taught us how to play it. They even joined in on the stream for a little bit. So that was a pretty cool experience. So if you want to see more stuff like that, you can, follow us on Twitch as well now. I've got a link to that in the description. So yeah, just join our Discord, follow us on Twitch, and follow me on Twitter as well. And yeah, so anyways, back to what I was talking about. What was I talking about? I forgot what I was talking about. Oh yeah. Okay. So, like I said, I would sometimes send a picture in the Discord about how empty the the Star Wars section was in the toy section if I ever passed through there. And stuff like that just goes to show that nobody's buying it, so there's not much demand. Therefore, they're not filling the shelves with this stuff. It's the supply and demand principle. If somebody doesn't want it, they're not going to sell it. Or if a large group don't want it, then they're not going to sell it, because why spend the money to purchase that item to resell if nobody's going to buy it? That's basically just wasted money. What you'll have to do is clearance it off, and you're not making profit off of it at that point. You are just, you're just there with the stuff, and you lost money in that in the end on that. So yeah. Also, I thought I was going somewhere else with that, but now I can't remember. But yeah, okay, yeah. You do have to look at it as a business. And at this point, they don't seem to be doing a great job with that, because if they were, people would be buying the stuff that they keep trying to put out, which, the only ones really buying anything, they're buying, like, let's say the Black Series 6-inch figures, or just Black Series in general, because Black Series is probably the best figures that you can get. But they're buying those online to collect rather than little kids to play with, and stuff like that. It's more of a collector's thing at this point, because they're not really giving us or giving kids much of anything to play with, and no kids wanting any of it, because, they're not as invested as, let's say, I was when I was little. Every time I went to Walmart, I would ask for a Star Wars figure, and my parents would get me one, stuff like that. So, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, their merchandising is terrible now, because they're not selling, and it's because nobody's invested. The only ones that are longtime fans that may like a certain character and want a figure of that person. They might want it for their collection, stuff like that. So, yeah.
The Minion Fleet line is a very good example of that, because that line is marketed specifically for kids, and it's not selling. You can find all of the items in whatever store you pick. You find everyone, because they're not selling. And it's not a bad line. I actually like some of the designs, but kids really don't care.
Nope. Nobody cares. The kids don't care at all at this point anymore. I mean, when I was little, the Star Wars figures felt like they were actual quality. They were, they were really nice figures. They had a lot of articulation to them. I mean, they weren't nothing like what the Black Series figures are now. But see, the thing is, the kind of quality you get with the Black Series figures, you would have gotten for like just the regular Star Wars figures back then when I was little.
I do want to say, when it comes to merchandise, kids now are less focused on actual toys, and they're more focused on like their digital apps. And there is tons and tons of mobile Star Wars games that they play now on their phones and tablets. And that's kind of what the focus is now, because that's where the money is. It's no longer really in action figures, maybe some Lego sets, but that's about it.
Well, that is true. I mean, most kids don't even probably play with toys that much anymore. They probably do just play on phones or play games or tablets. I mean, when I was little, I didn't have a phone to play on like I do now. The only thing I had to play on was a PlayStation 2 or a GameCube at that age. So if I wanted to do something that wasn't a video game, I had my Star Wars figures or my Legos. That's something I used to save up money for, was Lego sets or Star Wars figures or just anything Star Wars in general. And, I used to play with them. I don't anymore, of course, but I will still maybe buy one to collect. I leave them in the box, I mean, it's good to have a collection. But they also did a lot of stuff with their merchandising. Like, if you guys remember the silver coins that came with certain Star Wars figures, you probably wouldn't want to open the box, but if you wanted to collect them all, they also had this book that you can put them in. And I have it. I have it in my closet. I never did collect all the different coins, but I did collect some of them, and it also came with like a little Darth Vader as well. You may remember this, or some of you might, but that was something that they used to do, something special they used to do with their merchandising, and they also had some of them that come with like comics and stuff like that. I recently repurchased one of them that I had lost a long time ago. It was the one with Luke and Mara Jade, the old one that came with the Heir to the Empire comic. In it, it was really interesting. I don't think I ever read the comic. I can't remember what happened to it. I still have the two figures, but I think I messed up the Luke figure. And I still have Mara Jade, but I lost her blaster and her lightsaber. I still have it, but now I repurchased it, and which I'm leaving it in the box. I hate to do that because I want to look at the comic inside where I've never read it, but it's something for me to collect, and I just I purchased it again because it's something that meant a lot to me back then, and I don't know what happened to the stuff, but it happened. So, yeah, it's stuff like that they used to do back in the day that made you want to invest in some of their merchandising. And now it's just, oh, you got this little figure? Oh, okay. So, I mean, yeah, that's how you got to look at it as a business. And where things are mostly digital at this point, there's probably not a lot of kids playing with toys anymore. They're probably focused on tablets or phones or computers at this point. Like I said, I didn't have stuff like that when I was little. But now kids as young as probably even like 3 years old know how to use a phone better than I did when I first started at like 18 or something. I can't remember when I got my first phone or first smartphone. Let me put it that way. So, yeah, I mean, that's just how it is, Let's move on to Commander Tano on this subject. Entertainment. I know we got way off, but entertainment value and nostalgia versus fan service. What do you have to say about that for these trilogies, Commander Tano? Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, yeah. See you later, Dark Knight. I'm glad that you were able to join us on here.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And hopefully sometime soon you'll be able to join us again. That would be really awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right. Have a good one, buddy.
All right, see y'all.
I think Commander Tano is having some technical difficulties.
Seems that way.
Yeah. Well, while she's figuring that out, what do you got to say about it, Chrono?
Well, I think the entertainment value is there for all of the trilogies. I mean, if there's one good thing to say about the sequel trilogy is that it puts up a good show. I mean, if you focus on the action scenes, the starship battles, lightsaber duels, blaster fire, whatever, yeah, they do provide entertainment. It's not exactly that they are the worst movies ever. They are just bad Star Wars.
Yeah.
So yeah, regarding entertainment, I think it wouldn't be fair to not consider them entertaining because they are. Especially if The Force Awakens is, despite how safe it plays the whole thing, and the fact that it's a clone of Episode 4, it's still a good movie. You can watch it from the beginning to the end and have a good time.
Yep. I agree.
As for nostalgia and other stuff, I mean, yeah, the movies in general today rely heavily on nostalgia, which is not really a good thing because instead of being a callback to something that we all liked growing up, now it's been just a way to lure people in to something that is not remotely close to what they actually liked. And Star Wars has been abusing that. This is exactly what concerns a lot of people about the KOTOR game or some of the new shows like The Acolyte, the future of The Mandalorian itself. I mean, we all know it's Star Wars related, but to what extent is it still the Star Wars we all know and love?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so yeah, I think nostalgia has been working great for them, but they have been abusing it a little bit. And as long as they respect the source material enough, nostalgia is good. It's not a bad thing, but it has to be used appropriately.
I think the perfect example of nostalgia over fan service is probably Rogue One. If you want to go with a Disney Star Wars reference, or if you wanted to talk about something Disney Star Wars, let's talk about, like, let's say movie wise. I mean, of course, The Mandalorian would be, but let's say as far as the movie goes, Rogue One is probably a perfect, well, not perfect, but it's a good example of what nostalgia over fan servicing is. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they show a lot of callbacks for classic Star Wars through the movie, even though it's a whole different topic that's basically on a line. And yeah, the characters are all new, and they present this whole scenario that we haven't seen before. But there is a lot of nostalgia, for example, in the moment Vader steps in. Not just the scene in the ship's corridor, but before that, when we see him face Krennic, that scene, you already know Krennic is screwed because you see he's going to report to Vader, and he's going to report that he failed. And we all know the moment we see him there, we are like, "Oh man, you're so dead." and that happens because we know who Vader is. We know what to expect from him. We all loved seeing him standing there.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was by far, like, even the music in that scene just gave me nostalgia for Vader in general.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole scene was just wonderful. But yeah, I agree with you completely on that. I don't think Commander Tano is going to be able to come back.
Okay.
She said her connection keeps failing her. So I think she'll be back for part 3, which we will talk about. We might go over this particular element of entertainment value and nostalgia versus fan service again next time around. So I won't mark that off just yet. But I'm guessing, unless you have anything else to say, Chrono, I'm guessing we might just go ahead and end the stream here.
Yeah, I mean, we could still go for another hour if you want.
Yeah, you would want the 4-hour stream, wouldn't you? You would want that, uh-huh. I see what
It's
you're
not-
trying to do.
It's the audience wants the 4-hour stream.
Oh, you think the audience wants the 4-hour stream? Well, maybe next year on May 4th we'll have a 4-hour stream, just, for the memes. Hey, you know what? You know what we should do? We should have, we should take a break from Star Wars topics 1 week and have like a stream where we go through the subreddits of, let's say, the prequels and the original trilogy memes, and then we compare that with the sequel trilogy memes subreddit.
Oh, that would be fun.
That sounds like a fun stream right there. That actually might be what we do next time. After we do part 3, that is. We're going to do part 3 of this first, and I think we'll take a break for maybe a stream or two and just do something random with it. So that'll be fun. And I know I've already plugged it, but we have a Twitch channel. It's brand new, and we're going to be playing some more games on it. Right now we're streaming Star Wars The Old Republic which is really awesome. It's the first time I've ever played it. I've never played it before, so Sir AOA has got me into it. We've only got the free version, but if I enjoy it enough, which I believe I will, I might end up getting deeper into it and maybe buy its expansions or whatever. Whatever I need to buy, I'll buy it, I guess. I don't know, but it's the first time we played it, and if you missed out on it last time, well, don't worry. I recorded it. I might be able to do some highlights. Hopefully the recording did really good. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet because I've been so busy. But if the recording didn't turn out so well, I guess I'll maybe try to find the good parts of it and use that as like a little highlight reel. But honestly, if you want to see us do it, just watch us on Twitch. You'll see it from Sir AOA's perspective because, you know, my internet's terrible down here. I can't stream games, unfortunately. I probably barely stream these streams as it is. So you'll be seeing everything from Sir AOA's perspective, which, you know, I mean, that's okay. I don't mind. I don't mind that at all. He's fun to play with anyways. So, you know, it's just fun times. And I'll try to post the streams on YouTube. I just got to figure out how to do that because I tried to do that with this one and it didn't work. It just, I don't know how to do that. I'll figure it out though. That's why I recorded it as well, just in case I wouldn't figure it out. So, you know, things like that, you know, that it's fun. I'm trying to think. There was some the Discord, you know, just join the Discord. I always try to plug this stuff at the end of every stream that we do. Join the Discord. Follow me on Twitter. You can follow all of us on Twitter, actually. Commander Tano's at Lady Tano 501st. And Chronos at Chrono CD, right? With a capital C and D at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's correct. And, of course, I'm TFC Star Wars, or I'm at TFC, all capitalized, then Star Wars. So, yeah, you know. So, anyway.
For all the toxicity on Twitter.
Yeah, we're the most toxic people on Twitter, for sure. It's a wonder why we haven't been canceled yet.
Probably the Raylos clip that keeps us going.
Yeah, it's the Raylos, yeah. Because, you know, I always appease them, and I guess it gets them on my side for a while. You can't like go through a stream without appeasing them, otherwise you will get canceled. If Sir AOA was here, he would be like playing the part of the Raylos, going, "Oh, Kylo." Oh man, I don't know why he didn't join this time around. He hasn't like texted me or anything, and he must have had something come up.
My guess is giant spider or something like that.
Yeah, everything in Australia is big, so. Or is that Texas? No, that's Texas. Well, it probably goes the same for Australia as well. I probably sounded really racist. I don't know. I say weird things.
You're just a white male, so yeah.
Oh yeah, that
right.
explains it. I mean, since you're not a white male, you can say that, you know? I mean, you're the one that's allowed to point these things out to people. And
yeah, I'm a minority. I can say these things.
Yeah, so I mean, you have the minority card that you can play whenever you want, you know. So that's you know, that's a perk. That's a perk for you. All jokes aside, though, I've got to end the stream. So thank you for being on here, Chrono. I'd love to thank everybody else, but they're not here at this moment. But that's okay. I'll thank them later or something like that. But I'll do it on here just for courtesy's sake, you know. I'd like to thank Commander Tano. I'd like to thank Dark Knight. I'd like to thank Chrono, all of you. I'd also like to thank everybody that's watched it for being here on the stream today. It's been a pleasure doing this. And part 3 next week. Part 3 to the super long discussion that I thought only would take 2 parts. But then Sir AOA would have pointed out that you thought that it would end with just 2 parts. He likes to point these things out to me. Oh man, we didn't have a sponsor today. Oh no.
No, we didn't.
Oh no, I've. It's like, dang it, I missed the sponsorships. Well, let me see. Okay, no, I have nothing to sponsor. Oh well, I'm not as witty as Sir AOA is with some of his stuff. So
You should have sealed that deal with Pringles.
dang it, you know what? I should have. I mean, I still have. I've still got the can because I'm using it to store some stuff in. You know, um, I don't know why, but I do. Maybe it's because it's limited edition. It has Master Chief on it. I love it. Either way, I've still got it, and I mean, I could use that as a sponsorship for today, but I've already used it once, and that would just be unoriginal of me, unfortunately. Oh well, but I'm a white male, so I can't be original.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Chrono, for being on here and sticking with me till the end. You're awesome. And maybe, hey, after the stream, I gotta ask you something. But after,
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to end the stream. I'm searching for words at this point. You know what? Forget it. I'm ending it. So may the force be with you. See you guys.